If you're a multi-sport athlete, in particular, you love playing golf and you love playing baseball, you were probably told by your coach in each sport never to play the opposite sport during the same season, which makes it somewhat hard given that both golf and baseball are played in warm weather seasons. And if you enjoy playing both, your coaches didn't want you to participate in the other because the theory at the time, or even some still today, have the theory that one swing will mess up your other swing. But my guest today has a completely different take on that, and we're in agreement that the swing, the baseball, and the golf are quite similar, have a lot of things in common, and yes, they do have a few differences, and we go into a very deep discussion today about that. His name is Blake Austin, and he is a hitting instructor at USA Prime in Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. Blake is being widely referred to as a hitting guru and is even called by some people a mad scientist, and I'll let you hear why he's called that in his own words, as he has a tendency to pull things from the periphery and outside of his field to help improve those that he's working with, which I think is a great thing, and I've done that quite a bit in my own coaching and instruction. We also talked to the similarities and some of the things that golf swing coaches and baseball hitting coaches can share and learn from one another, and that one industry has gone much, much further than the other. For example, baseball hitters have always trained for speed since the dawn of the sport, and it wasn't until recently that golf coaches and golfers in particular have specifically trained for speed. It might have happened before, but it has not happened or been a focal point as it is in today's game. And Blake talks a lot about that, why speed is so important, why it's one of the lead factors in someone's ability to excel at the game, to enjoy it more, and to become better. So just a fabulous conversation. I really enjoyed spending time with him. I can't wait till we can play some golf this year and continue our discussion, help one another out, and just continue learning for our benefit as well as all of those that we work with. So, as always, please sit back, relax, and give a big Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, hitting instructor and hitting guru, Mr. Blake Austin. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This episode of the Golf 360 podcast is brought to you by Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms with their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model, which is often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns, and at Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you will receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Contact them today at 248-840-3863 or www.affinitywealthmg.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right, very excited to have Mr. Blake Austin. He is a hitting instructor from USA Prime in Georgia. Blake, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, man. Excited about this. It's been a while. I'm excited.
Yeah, I was going to open up with the B Locky, but didn't know if I should go there right off the bat. But I think that thing's gone viral
heard
by
it millions of times.
Right, I think a lot of people was crack up over that. But
That's right.
I'm sure you got to get. How many people say that to you on a weekly basis?
Oh man, I went and got my hair cut last week, and the guy cuts my hair. Come on, Block A, and it's probably once a week, twice a week for sure. So even when I got people that know me, they always say it. So it's funny.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, because you're a big golf fanatic,
Mm-hmm.
I'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've been kind of staying up on what's been happening in the golf world and that SGL, that Saudi Golf League, and that whole controversy. What do you because you're in the baseball field? What do you think would happen if somebody in baseball tried to start a super league?
You know, especially with what's going on in the MLB with the lockout situation and the CBT they're talking about and all that stuff. I mean, I think it's kind of like it would be similar to like a Japan league. I don't know how like the financial portions of it, like what Saudi is talking about, giving those players, you know, and promising them a salary based is really fascinating. I think if you did that, it'd be hard to field, you know, more than 5 or 6 teams because you're talking about the Freddie Freemans of the world who are, you know, they want $40 million a year, you know. So I think the structure, you could make a legit, almost like an Olympic baseball type of World Baseball Classic type of feel, which would be super awesome for the fans. I think. I mean, you're talking about the best players in the world, you know, the top 1%ers of the top 1%ers going at it together, because that's what if you were going to do it, that's the way I would do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be very interesting. You can do it in golf since they're all individuals, or well, maybe you can't do it in golf. I mean, it seems like they keep trying.
Well, I think when you read about Phil Mickelson's comments about it, I think a lot of it has to do with PGA kind of owning the rights to a lot of the content bases and, you know, things that are in predominantly powerful social media platforms now that promote they can make career earnings off of that too. But just promote the golf game and grow the game and that type of stuff that baseball has been doing, trying to make it more engaging to fans. I think for the past 5 or 6 years, I think they've done a better job at it. But like for golf, man, I mean, you get the inside look on what Phil Mickelson is thinking about when he has a 62-degree wedge in his hands and he's, you know, 15 yards off the green, which would be super, like, for me, I'm sure for golf fans, that'd be unreal to hear. Just the audio of that and the situations and how they come up with it and all that. I think the game would grow significantly when you have the best players in this generation going at it with each other.
I think that's what they're trying to do with that Netflix show that they're putting together.
They're trying to. I read something about it saying how the dedication of it, and they don't even own. I don't think the players were getting paid for it. Like that was the main issue. I don't know the nuts and bolts of it, but I mean, I'm ready to see it. It's been going on for quite a while filming it. So I think the matches that they had during the COVID time with the AirPods in there, I think that was a fantastic audio. I love that.
I think that the thing that the golfing industry struggles with is just, they base a lot of what they do on tradition. And in today's world, I mean, that's good to have. It's good to have traditions, but I think that keeping it your entire focus, it has worked in some sort of detrimental fashion to them, in that they're not really seeming to be embracive of going outside the box of what is traditional to help grow the game. And whether, I mean, I haven't talked to enough people that know the inside workings of how the PGA Tour works. I mean, I know that their pension fund was grandfathered under old tax codes. So, I mean, you guys like Mickelson can talk a lot about, well, the tour is making all this money off our media and our likeness and all these other things or whatever he's saying. And people might jump on his side versus the tour side. But I mean, there's a lot of things that people don't know about. And I don't know if both sides are trying to keep that quiet, but if you're going to have an argument, you're going to spill it out into the public. To
Right.
defend it
Well, I
at
think
some
that's
point,
where
you're going to have to defend it
that's
with
right.
some
I think that's
honesty.
where you're looking at some transparency issues between the major league clubs and Major League Players Association right now. I mean, I think that's what you can argue. Golf and baseball are probably the most old school, cultural based, you know, professional sports that try to hold that culture, and it's kind of going against the protection of the players, and they've been exploited for a little bit. Whether it's social media liking this or on the baseball side, it's basically teams owning the rights to keep you down in the minor leagues without paying you to keep you off your major league contracts or potential to grow those in arbitration and just earnings as a younger player.
Mm-hmm.
Because the league is, I mean, it's so tough, and the tour is too. And you get a lot of guys that have a card for their PGA Tour card for a year or 2 years, they lose it, and then it's a really struggle to get back. And very, very individualistic sport there, and hard to climb your way back through the ranks, especially as the game is growing in terms of the technology, in terms of how they're training, in terms of what's valuable off the deck, off the driver, what's valuable around the greens. Like a lot of things, technology is growing with it. The ball technology is growing with it. Where we're seeing that in baseball finally, where bat fittings become a huge deal these days, right? So learning what bat fits the player's swing rather than correcting a swing. So we're catching up on our end of the baseball side, and that's why I'm fascinated in golf, because the technology is so geared towards that player, that individual, and you can change as your body changes or as you get stronger or older or whatever. But speaking on the culture, like listening to Tiger Woods back when I was a kid, right, there was very hard to find interviews where he kind of let himself out. He kind of seemed restricted. Or you watch at the Genesis Open, you hear that conversation being had. It's like, man, like that's what golf back in 2002 and 2003 need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Like they need that guy. They need that guy who's fiery, that's just kind of off of the restrictions and just let him be who he is. So I mean, the Saudi, I think if you could get two or three players, I think that's all it would take. Just like much like in baseball, it takes two or three of those guys to kind of make it, the momentum big enough to make that change.
Yeah, I'm just kind of watching it, interested to see how this plays out, because with Norman's letter recently to the Monahan, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't sound like they're willing to give up that fight, and I
I think
just
it's a
hope
real
it works
fight.
out
I
well for
think
the
it's a real
game.
fight.
Yeah, it is. I don't see some of the. I mean, you're talking big money, and big money behind it, and I know the Brando Chambleys and Eamon Lynch's and those guys are vehemently against it. But
Yeah.
what I've seen, some people pose some fair questions on social media, were that group who's very anti league, and one of them was, well, if it wasn't backed by Saudi Arabia, if it was backed by Switzerland, let's say, what would you say about it then? And then when
True.
Harold Varner, and this is nothing against Harold, I mean he's playing a golf tournament, he wins that event over in Saudi Arabia, and no one made a peep.
That's right.
So is it? And if you look at social media, it's like not all of them, but a fair amount of the anti-Phil or going hard after Phil on social media was from Golf Channel personalities. So
Yes.
I don't know if there's something going on there
Older
where
personalities.
yes, where they don't get along or what's going on. But I'm kind of, that caught my eye. I'm like, wait a second, there's a common denominator here.
Very
This is
similar to MLB Network right now, what's going on and how they're portraying the labor talks right now.
mm-hmm,
Very similar. Very similar story where you got you got a group of people going one way, and then the the people who cover it on a night to night basis is saying the complete opposite. And it's kind of odd, man. It's kind of where the allegiance lie, really.
right. Well, that's enough about that. Talk about outside stuff. I'm going to talk about you a little bit, and then what you do, and then we're going to talk about the golf swing and the baseball swing
Let's do
similarities,
it.
differences in mechanics. Now, but I do have that. I mean, you played ball, you played baseball at Auburn, and
Yep.
Bo Jackson, best player to ever come
Yes.
out of Auburn.
By far. Funny story. Bo actually came back. What was my junior year? It was 2013. Came back and threw out a first pitch, and I got to catch it. I
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be warming up the pitcher, starting pitcher for that day, but that was a chance I could miss. So ran down there, caught it. We talked for a little bit, and he threw that thing like probably 85, 86 at what, 45, 50. So that's pretty freaking hard with a broken hip too. So, but we sitting in there at K-State for the game for the first 5 or 6 innings, and I hit a ball to shortstop against Texas A&M. Man, I smoked it pretty good. And I'm not a fast guy. I'm not Bo Jackson, right? But I wore 34 on the baseball field, so that's his football number.
Mm-hmm.
So I get thrown out by a couple steps, come back in, put my catching gear on, I sit down on the bench. Bo comes up to me and says, "Hey, if you're going to wear that effing number, right, you better beat those balls out." Kind of like giggled. I looked at him and I said, "Hey, man, you see that wall out there where your number's retired? You wore 29 on this field." And we just kind of got back. But he's a great guy, man. He comes back when he can. It's definitely the best athlete I think has ever walked the planet.
Yeah, there's a guy here that played in South Carolina. Not he played at a smaller college, and told me one time that they went and scrimmaged Auburn. And he said Jackson hit he came up to bat 4 times, hit 4 home runs. He's never seen anyone hit a baseball that far in his life.
Well, what was odd was back then they were swinging drop fives, so like they hadn't made the switch to the drop three yet.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of those bigger humans were, I mean, Pete, you're talking about exit velocities that people can't see. Because you got guys like that are swinging bats that are hot as they get. The old Magic, Easton Magic, Black Magic bats.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those bats were explosive, and it just kind of gave, we'll talk about it a little bit in the swing and what I think is good for younger players, older players, and how swinging with violence as a younger age is really, really beneficial. But seeing that ball fly helps out the confidence. Hey, I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm going to grow into it. And then physically, you're talking about Bo Jackson, with his physical attributes, man, you're talking about a guy that can just hit balls through anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's rumors he breaks nets down. I haven't heard any of those, but I haven't heard anybody on Auburn's campus talk about seeing those. So that might just be a legend there.
We, when I was playing the mini tours, we played a few events in Auburn, and that was actually the first time I ever had mellow mushroom, and it blew me away. I'm like, this place is unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah, that was back.
Place.
That was 20 years ago. That's how long ago that was. But
it was good pizza.
All the guys in the tour, and back then there was Boo Weekly, Bud Still. I think Jason. I'm not sure if Jason Bone had gone to Canada yet. That's when he was playing up there. God, there's a number of guys that got their tour cards. Jake Reeves was playing back then. Whole bunch of guys, but everybody went to Heath Slocum's dad ran that tour with his wife, Miss Kay, and everybody was saying because the girls there were so beautiful all over the town. And they're like, man, we need to have an event here every week.
It is called God's country for a reason.
It's
it ain't
amazing.
got nothing to do with the weather. So,
but before we get into the deep stuff, as we were introduced through a mutual friend, Jeff and Sue Churchich. So I was talking to Jeff today, and I understand that you hit it pretty hard, the ball that is, even in your golf swing. He wanted me to ask you that when you played Harbortown, were there any windows that got in the way of your hard hit golf balls?
I don't think so. I think a lot of it was stopped by cars and moving objects that made the impact a little softer. Yeah, but we've cleaned that up since then. I've learned a lot. Jeff, when they introduced me to golf and kind of, because, man, back in the day, dude, when you're told as a baseball player, like, golf will mess your swing up, right? So we never got to do it. So anytime I had picked up a driver or any club, and Pete, I'm being honest, like, I never got to swing a club more than 3 or 4 times before the shaft and the head broke. So I just put it down. Well, when Jeff, talked to me with PXG and some of the knowledge that I learned in the baseball side of the swing things, it kind of made the connection of how valuable, club fittings are, how valuable the shafts are, how valuable the ball is, and all those little pieces add up to, a result that you don't have to overcompensate with. So playing Harbortown with Jeff and EJ, which he swings the crap out of it too. I had a shaft that was not capable of holding my speed, so balls are flying all over the place. And when you finally get one right and you want to see it go straight, and you do, you're aimed way left because you're playing the slice. So you're hitting them into houses down there in Bluffton that will cost you a pretty penny if you hit the wrong one. So yeah, that's a fun time down there.
Let me ask you a little bit about because as I was reading some of your material online, you had a post, I think it was last week,
Hmm.
about good hitters versus elite hitters, and the difference was something effective. Elite hitters know they're good.
Hmm.
Do you think that they get that from experience, meaning that they have failed enough and they learned how to either overcome that through skill development, working with somebody like you, and that creates confidence to know, or is it just that they talk themselves into it?
So I think that's a great question. I put one out today that's about aggression over discipline or before discipline. So like when I was a kid, I never thought I was a good player. Like there wasn't social media, there wasn't rankings, there wasn't anything like that. So I got to kind of work and challenge myself against my peers. And then, I kind of wasn't physically gifted as a younger player, had some injuries due to just, natural things of playing a lot of baseball. And finally got into the summer world like when I was 14, 15, which is more competitive. And then, I always played up. I always played with 17, 18-year-old kids. And really the maturation of it became as a hitter, right? You have two options. One, you get after them, the pitcher, or they get after you. And it really comes down to that concept and what are you willing to do to win as a hitter. A lot of the training guys, the hitting gurus, a lot of those guys, they spend a lot of time on mechanics, but they hardly see, you know, we hardly hear about how they get the best out of their hitters on a consistent basis, day to day, in and out, because of being tired or mentally weak or having bad results. So, sitting here, I was a very, very uber competitive human. Still am. When guys want to throw against me, I don't even get, you know, they don't even get two words out of me. And I get out there and I'm hitting live against them. And we're sitting there, and a lot of what I have is playing at Auburn University, playing with the Braves. A lot of guys that I had played with or against are now in the Pro Bowl, been in the big leagues like Bryce Harper and anybody that's 29, 30, I played against them or with
Mm-hmm.
them. And the same thing applies, and you start to see it. You start to see that these guys they're not douchebags or assholes or bad humans. They just have an unreal desire to just win and compete and hit it through your face. And if they get out, it ain't your fault. It's the guy that I got myself out kind of mentality. No excuses. It's on me, type of thing. But like my maturation as a player going to Auburn, the hardest thing to do is get on that field. And when you get on that field, the hardest thing to do is to stay on the field. So you're always having that like light, that light switch on of I'm competing every second of every day for my life. In the meantime, everybody's telling what you can't do. All the draft guys are telling you can't do this and that. So, um, you know, speaking of elite hitters walk to that box. They trust their training. They understand their mechanics. They know what you have. They've done their preparation. They've done it in the mind and in the body, and it is time to get after it. And we just equal it out. So where you may be on the mound thinking, "Hey, I'm trying to get this guy out using these three pitches," my guy's sitting in there going, "Hey, you can throw any one of those. I don't give a rip. I'm gonna whoop that ass."
Mm-hmm.
So and it's kind of trusting training. What we do in here is has evolved very, very um, higher level training stuff. A lot of different objectives here. So we really train any kind of scenario these players will be in at any given time. And we just keep repeating, repeating, repeating. So it's 16, 17, 18-year olds are more mature as a hitter than a 23, 25-year old like in the past. Um, so to answer your question, I think a lot of it comes with experience. I think a lot of it comes with confidence. But as a 11, 12-year-old player, everybody carries confidence. Everybody does. Somewhere along the line between 12s and 14s, we kind of lose that. Whether it's a coach, whether it's results, whether it's something off the field, and we don't really trust ourselves. And when that happens, like, dude, you can forget about it. So I think a lot of it is a mindset of daily, day to day, being just a flat competitor, and trusting what you do and knowing yourself.
And I think that goes across the spectrum. Whether you're in baseball, or whether you're in golf, it's and I think that confidence comes from, as you say, putting the individual or the student in the position that is would be somewhat, as I guess for a very rough term to call it, functional mental training, where you're putting them in a position where they can develop that skill on a practice field, so that by the time they get in the pressure situation of a game, that they have some comfort in that
They've seen it.
uncomfort. Yes.
Yeah. And I think the difference in our world and in golf, I think I can go on the range, man. I can hit 10 out of 10, square them up, right? When I get on that course and I see something, maybe the shot isn't what I want, so it's forcing me to set up a little different. I've got to be able to execute all that, right? So like I love golf because you can the lie's the lie, right? Once you identify the lie, right, where you're at, you can identify what shot you can take, what club you have to pull, a lofted, a more loft or less loft, and a punch, a stinger, or a draw, a fade. And it's all just on your setup once you select it.
Mm-hmm.
In baseball, man, like you've got so many variables that are implied. And I put something out today on social about a little bit of how the workflow happens when it comes to the aggression over discipline, and how be aggressive, right? Take the driver off the deck, and it's get it 20 yards closer to the pin rather than laying back and having to hit two perfect shots. If you hit one that's, 10, 15, 30 yards offline, well, you have a lesser club, a higher loft, so you can deal with some of the rough, right? You can deal with the bunker, you can deal with some other things, and the ball's on the air. So like you take all of the wind, the attributes you can't even, control out of play. So for baseball, we're trying to do the same thing, identify and remember what pitches I do what with, why I can't do certain things, what I'm great at, right? And then at the end of the day, swing the bat, swing the thing. If you choose it and you're 50-50, you're kind of borderline on what shot you want to take, or in golf and baseball, what you're trying to accomplish, then you'll never do it. It's just too hard of a game.
I was talking to my dad this afternoon. He asked me who was coming on. I told him you and who you are and what you did. And I want to run this by you, because as a player, as a baseball player that you were at the highest of levels, and then as a coach who is a guru, I guess that is the term now that you're getting tagged with, which good luck with that one, because the expectation now moves up, right?
Right. Everybody thinks, sorry.
Right. So I was telling him, and I read material many, many years. This got to be 15 to 20 years ago. And then, so I knew it, and I wouldn't even call it arguing or debated with some of my contemporaries, and they told me I was wrong because there's this, and I was like, well, you're just full of shit because you're not up to speed on what the actual hard data empirical science is. You're just going off of some bullshit. But what I'm getting at is, it was whether you're coaching an individual in a sport like you and I do, or if you're working against an opponent, be it a batter versus a pitcher, martial artist, where you're looking at movement of somebody across from you. Mm-hmm. But movement recognition was the number one attribute when they really dug into what makes like a gold medal winner, what makes, and then actually, and when I was debating one guy or discussing this with one of my contemporaries, I brought up that there was a Sports Illustrated article probably about 10 or 12 years ago that they said, what are great baseball hitters and home run hitters made, or are they born? And they were using, he used a couple of the big boys at the time. Who was the guy from the Phillies, the big dude, Howard?
Oh God, the Phillies back then?
It was a Philly. Yeah, I think it was a Philly. My brother fit him for PXG clubs.
That's awesome.
Ryan Howard.
That's what my bag is. Yeah, Ryan Howard.
Ryan Howard. So he was one of them, because obviously back then he was a big home run hitter. And what they found out was the motion recognition of an elite hitter, be it for power or for percentage, the motion recognition of the pitcher, they could eliminate, let's say, 75% of the plate of where they knew the ball was not going to be, so that their window of where they were swinging to was much smaller, and what turned out to be that their ability to hit the ball was far greater.
That's right. So I actually just pulled my notebook out. I was diving into some of movement time training. So when you look at a lot of baseball hitting gurus, I'm putting that in air quotes, by the way, but a lot of those guys don't train how fast we move and how efficient we move at certain points. A lot of it because the load and the sequencing and all that stuff is it can speed up your reaction or it can slow it down, right? So like in baseball, if you over react, that's going to cause a lot of manipulation through the body and through the energy that you're trying to transfer. And it's just going to happen so fast and so quickly that you're not going to be able to control it. So a lot of those elite power hitters, contact hitters, average hitters, they have a sense of awareness that is both preparation, knowing who they're facing, where that ball starts and how they know that that's not going to be a strike for them. Is very key to the mental side of it in your approach for baseball players. But as the swing mechanic, those players move quicker in shorter spurts and faster and can let the ball travel a hair or however long, scientifically speaking, to give them better reaction time to recognize what pitches they can handle. And I don't to answer your question, like talking about are they born or are they made? I think it's a little bit of a both, right? Like the born part is the skills. Like Ryan Howard's 6'4", he's a massive human being,
Mm-hmm.
and he just from the left hand side, like he just has it. But a lot of what Eric Cressy has taught me and some of the performance stuff that we did a mentorship with was, is it good to be Ryan Howard for 5 to 8 years career? Or if we clean up some inefficiencies that we know the body can't handle, that a longevity career, and maybe we have a longer career with bigger numbers, potentially use that athletic ability to be a Hall of Famer. Like those are the questions that elite trainers are asking. And you always have to say, like, the guy was an MVP. Like he hit 45 home runs a year. Like how much better does it get? And you have to weigh out, okay, do I want him to have a 15-year career and be healthy and have good numbers, or a 4 to 5, 8-year career of great numbers and be out of the game before he gets full pension?
Right.
So and I've always struggled when I was a younger coach going to Cressy and learning some of the dynamics. My life changed completely from what I had been taught to what was on the forefront of the training aspect of it. So I basically revamped everything that I did as a hitting coach from that day on. And I've continued to push that to the limits, whether it's in golf, whether it's in rugby, whether it's in, different sporting arenas that do powerful movements, hockey, cricket, anything that you're swinging a club or anything at a moving object. Like I want to know how they're transitioning speed and power and organizing that through the body. So I think a lot of it is born skills. I think the most of it can be trained. I think a lot of what you're talking about is what we talk about here in the facility is, if I have a left-handed pitcher and I'm a right-handed hitter, if he's a left-handed guy that has a 12-6 breaking ball, it's coming straight over the top. It's got a high spin rate. We know that, right? If I don't catch my barrel inside of that ball out in front, the angle is going to kill me. Right. So if I know if it starts middle, I'm good to go. If it starts away from me, it's going to flatten out. I have no chance. I might as well take it, keep it for a strike. Or if it's a ball, if you get lucky. If it starts in, we let it go. So identifying some of the shapes and patterns and all that stuff is a little bit key and helpful for their swing mechanics. But I will say this, mechanically speaking, if you're not sound, you will never achieve anything else we're talking about. In my opinion, if you don't
especially at the
mechanically
higher
organize
levels, you
that's right.
you can't get away with
No,
mediocrity I shouldn't say media. Well, in a big sense, it's mediocrity, but it's a loss of efficiency because it gets
that's right.
exposed.
That's right. Well, see, in golf, they know that, right? Like exposure happens at a high level when you're talking about the PGA Tour and just some of the younger guys that are coming, even the Corn Ferry.
Mm-hmm.
But in our world in baseball, the athletic ability sometimes is so greater, like so much greater than their opponent. They get away with it. And how long they get away with it just depends. You have a lot of guys that are like Jeff Francoeur, 2 to 3 year careers that are just superior, gifted human beings. And then once the league figures it out, then you have to make adjustments. Jason Hayward is one of them. Francoeur is another. I'll even put Chipper Jones in there in the early 90s when he's in minor leagues and not knowing why he's in minor leagues. Making some of those adjustments, whether it's a bigger bat he talks about, stepping open, some of those things, make him a better player efficiently speaking, mechanically, which made his athletic ability just soar. So a lot of guys talk about, combining a little bit of inefficiencies and making them more efficient, however you have to do it, right? Making them more efficient only plays to their more athletic ability that they're already gifted with.
Well, and that's what I was very not surprised, but also interested to see, which only enhanced my argument to these guys. was, and I think it was David Epstein. When it was, I think it was in his book Range. What I don't think it was in Sports
Mm-hmm.
Genius. It was in Range. I think that's the one where he talked about where they took. I think Ryan Howard was part of the group again. They had Barry Bonds. They had all these elite hitters, and they had Jenny Finch, who was a U.S. Olympian for the softball team, the pitcher, pitching underhand to them, and they couldn't hit her.
That's right.
And it's like I told these guys, I'm like, okay, you have the most elite hitters in baseball, arguably in history, some of them, and they can't even hit the ball to an underhand pitcher. That just proves my point that it's motion recognition more so
That's
than
right.
it is anything else. Because
I agree.
you're right. So you're like Barry Bonds, love him or hate him. And I'm the amateur when it comes to the baseball, so I'm expert at golf. And you tell me. I mean, as far as efficiency goes, to me, from the mechanics of it, from what I'm looking at, he looks like he's pretty damn efficient.
So we were breaking this down for one of our. We only talk these kind of mechanics with probably 1% of our group. Okay, with our high school kids, we really don't touch this idea with them. But a lot of guys don't talk about Barry Bonds, A Rod, these generational type hitters. Love them or hate them. I love them both. By the way, I don't care steroids or not. Hitting in baseball is tough.
Mm-hmm.
All right, hitting it efficiently and hard is very difficult to do, especially when the pitchers are on steroids too.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? Like Roger Clemens, like, come on. But in speaking of Barry Bonds' mechanics, like his knob, and this is a my old coaches in minor league and professional baseball will slap me for saying this, but his knob actually goes through the plate, like it reaches over the plate. And a lot of guys don't like that. A lot of guys think the knob and the barrel has to come through, more of an inside out approach. Well, when we look at these great hitters in the Japanese hitters, with Ichiro, some of these guys their knobs get out in the middle of the plate, let their body clear it, so they're free enough to get depth to allow the barrel to get on plane quicker with less time of having to react, right? So they can make late decisions that nobody else can make because they're creating space around their back and their spine that nobody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody, and again, the part with baseball is everybody will look at that movement pattern and go, hey, he's Barry Bonds. You can't do that. Which, again, has some validity. However, the mechanics are the mechanics. And he makes the mechanics smooth and efficient and powerful, right, by being the most efficient baseball player to ever swing the bat. That's why there was not a lot of holes. Like, you couldn't find them.
Right.
Once you,
That was my whole argument to these guys.
Yep.
It's like, here you are. Here's a guy whose mechanics are as good as anybody on the planet or throughout history, and he can't hit an underhand pitch. Come on. And he's used
That's
to
right.
hitting pitches 25 to 30 miles an hour faster. It just goes
Well,
to
yeah.
show that his ability to recognize the motion and where the ball is going to be is completely blown to pieces because it's a completely different motion.
Yeah, he'd have to revamp the entire swing to match what he's doing. Now, you give him time,
Oh, he
a
would
week or
figure
two.
it out.
Oh,
Yeah.
he'd figure it out. Like, those guys are just special.
I mean,
But,
I drive my girlfriend and my brother crazy. We'll sit there and watch golf, and like we'll watch Bay Hill this week or this weekend, and I'll sit there and guys will make a swing. I'm like, that's in the right rough or that's in the bunker. And how the hell do you know that? I'm like, I've seen swings for 30 years, and I never grew up with the technology that a lot of people had. I never had the money for video back in the 80s and 90s, and then I definitely didn't have the money for TrackMan and all that. And I think those things are great devices to have, but I also think that I would have never have learned the motion recognition that I have now if I'd have had all that stuff back then.
I completely agree. I'm on the forefront of both, right? I was in the back half of old school,
Mm-hmm.
and I graduated high school in 2010, so I'm not old. Now, I'm not saying that, but there was hardly. I never saw technology, not even at Auburn, until 2015, 16, when I was coming back as a grad assistant over there to help out. You had starting to see video. You started seeing, the TrackMans, the flight scopes, the Rapsodos. Those were starting to make their way, to the college ranks. And the odd part is all of this is tracked in MLB since 2016. Right. So these guys know their data for, if you're in the league for 5 or 6 years, if you have gotten better at certain things or worse, and they don't use it. And if they do use it, it would make no sense on why they're not making any changes. Like Jason Hayward has still not made changes to that swing, and it's just fought it and fought it and fought it. So I'm with you too. The more swings you see, that's why I'm blessed to have the opportunity I did early on as a young coach to be, in an organization that had 700 and something members at it. So I get to see thousands and thousands of swings a day. And then go to a high school world where you see the same hitters for 6 months.
Hmm.
So you get to see a little bit of growth or dysfunction or over time, what's it look like rather than in that world, you get maybe see that kid once a week or 2 times a week and you don't see him for a month. Then you transition out of it and you come back into the same world. And now you're combining a 12-month process with your hitters are seeing 1,000 swings a day, right? So you kind of build a routine, a structure, a program, if you will, to let them grow, whether they're 12 or whether they're 18, right? And how we challenge them each day, you know, if you're younger, you get it in pieces. If you're older, you ain't got time to waste, right? So we put it on you in a day-to-day basis. You don't see anything similar. You don't see back-to-back feel-good stuff ever when you're 16, 17 years old in this facility. It is tough. And if you leave angry, that's a good idea. That means you're going to go home and get better.
Yeah, there's a lot of arguments in golf. Well, maybe not arguments, but like the two terms that are being thrown back and forth are block practice versus oh shit, what's the other one? Drawing a complete blank. It's not interval, variable practice. To what you just mentioned about those kids aren't seeing the same pitch twice. Is block practice would be, let's say you're going to sit there, you're going to hit 7 irons for 20, 30 minutes, and there's a lot of argument that says it's not doing any good. There's after about 5 to 10 swings, you're not absorbing anymore.
That's right. Well, if you're
Right, an argument back is, well, I on the course, I'm not going to see all the variables I'm going to on the practice. I'm going to see on the course, but if I can get good at hitting consistent shot pattern, whether it's a 3-yard fade or a 5-yard draw, whatever it is, that's the most important thing. And then it just goes back and forth. So
I don't understand those arguments because didn't Tiger Woods move the ball better than anybody? I mean,
until Bubba came along, yeah,
that's right. Until Bubba started doing it, but I mean, how do you win majors? You have to move the ball. You have to draw it. You have to cut it. You have to, you have to have a power fade. You have to have a high draw. Like you have to have a bunch of things because the variables in golf is the course. Now, the cool thing about golf is you get 4 days at it. If you're good, you get 4 days. Right. You know what I mean? In baseball, the chances that you see the same pitch in a game is probably never happened. In the same location, same situation, same inning, same count, same everything. It's ridiculous. So we train for the variables now at an older age, right? So at the younger age, we take choices out, right? Because in baseball, there's a lot of choices: fastball, swing or take, right? Then you have, you start introducing breaking balls. Well, there's 4 choices because you have a swing and take for that. You have change ups, you have, sliders, you have all of these choices being made, and you just overkill them, right? So at the younger age, we tell these suckers, we set the fastball up. And we play a game, it's called no takes, no foul balls. Hey, you don't get a take and you don't get a foul ball it. You either get after this thing and get on time and hit it, or you don't. That's it, 9, 10, 11s. Because the velocity is not overpowering. It's the purest game you're going to get. You start adding in velocity and changes and all those choices, you start to see dysfunction, manipulation, and honestly, an explosion in the brain of a player.
They can't handle it.
They can't handle it.
Yeah.
So because they're not trained accordingly, in my opinion.
Well, they're probably not. There's the training age, there's a biological age and chronological age, and if internally they can't handle it, well, then why would the coach waste their time trying to teach something?
That's right. That's right.
It's wasted. You're not doing the kid any good.
If you're a golfer, why would you block practice? I think it's an old school kind of way to do it. Because I don't know how many 7-irons they're going to hit on a golf course. I don't see very rarely do they hit 2 or 3 up, or they wouldn't break their clubs, right? So like I don't, and I watch a lot of golf, but when you see a round of golf being played, they probably hit their wedges more than anything. I mean, on just pure numbers, the 7-irons, the long irons, like that's the way these guys drive this ball nowadays. Like I don't know why I was ever sit there and hit 15, 20 of my 4-iron.
Well, I think it's more the shot pattern. So, like, Scott Fawcett, who owns Decade, who's got some great stuff out there, and I'm trying to get him on to discuss this more in detail. He works with Bryson. He works at Will Zalatoris. And by more block practice, I think he's getting at you don't have to hit a ton of balls, number one, but you need to develop what your shot pattern is. So Bryson's always working on a soft draw. I think Will hits a soft draw. Morikawa hits a soft fade. And it's knowing your go-to shot every single time.
Feeling that. That's right. I agree with that.
And then when you have to move it, like on 10 at Augusta, where you have to move it right to left, period. There's no doubt.
That's right.
No one's taking over the trees on the left and fading it back.
That's right.
So it gets into that, but and I haven't delved into the variable versus block practice a lot. I've read both sides of the argument, and my position is, well, there's certain times that both are very beneficial. It just depends where you are in the
I
training
do.
process.
That's right. I do think if you're, I think that's why they're talking about college golf is such a benefit to the PGA Tour because college golf's becoming very competitive. Well, I think a lot of those guys are trained to know their shot shape then.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get challenged to as a pro to start to move the ball, knowing the foundation of their shot shape. And that's a key piece that I don't know if in baseball we really get the idea there because a lot of as you grow, a ball that you may be able to be comfortable hitting as a high school player, when you start seeing velocity at that a different age, it may not be a ball you want to go on. So it's a lot of different choices being made. Where in training it's very it's different. That'd be interesting block practice versus what you're talking about in the shop shape practices of variables
I'd have to
and how
imagine
you
that,
could
you
do it.
could do it with a kid. I remember. I played little league. I played up until early high school, and I can remember being very, very good at hitting a fastball, even at a young age. But when it
Yeah, if
came
you
to
can't hit a fastball, you're in trouble.
right, when it came to hitting a curve at that time, I was clueless.
Yeah, a lot
My
of
uncle, we'd play in the backyard. He would strike me out I'd see that thing coming. I'd wind up, and all of a sudden, there it dives, and I'm like, so
that's
I
right.
could see where block practice in baseball could be beneficial to a kid, as you mentioned. It's at 12, 13, maybe 14. You know the ages better than I do on the development on
Yeah.
that side. I could see where focusing on how to hit a curve or a slider would be a benefit. Just the same way as if you took a kid who's practiced off flat lies, and now he's getting into higher elite level junior golf, and now you got to take them out there and show them, get them comfortable in hitting off uneven lies, because that's if they want to play elite level golf with juniors and then in college, that's what they're going to have to know how to do.
That's right.
Um, does it bother you because as you work with a lot of kids and we talked about developing them, that when
Hmm.
someone says that player is pure talent, because it doesn't really take into account the hard work and the skill development that they put in, that you're
Yeah.
putting in.
Yeah, so I hear that a lot here. So I'm in a unique area where a lot of technology is not being pushed back on. It's just the fear of not knowing how valuable it is. And I've always been an advocate for it as just a little bit of, if worst case scenario, bottom line, you could just use it to track if a player is growing or not, right? So we use it in different aspects and different reasons. But, I work with a lot of guys. I'll give a couple examples. Like Jay Spalak is committed to Georgia Tech. And I'll say that he is a hitter. Okay, going to a Power Five school like Georgia Tech's top five and being just a hitter, you have to really hit. And he's always hit. But I've had him since he was 11 to 12 years old. And a lot of people say, well, you know, Jace does things that others can't, right? He's just talented that he can't. Well, that's not entirely true because Jace isn't the most gifted in height, not the strength, not the attributes of wingspan, hand speed. All that stuff is not off the charts, but all of it is very good, and he puts all of it together on a consistent basis. And he's worked his ass off to get to where he's understanding, his swing pattern, what makes him good, to allow his approach to work for him. Um, we work with a 15-year-old that came in yesterday that hit it 100 miles an hour at 23 degrees. Well, that's just dumb, right? There's not a lot of guys doing that, and we have about four of them that are 99 to 100. So, I always joke around here that we're very blessed. We kind of lose in sight that not every facility, not every coach has guys that are swinging it that way. I think it's a kudos to our coaches and our staff that put the work in. But a lot to the players. I mean, talent's one thing, man, but a lot of kids don't get to use their talent. A lot of kids get to, when you're a young kid and you are talented, you don't get coached hardly. And I wish we could change that in our game because a lot of the 13-year-olds that peak, they get to 14s and then all of a sudden they want to be coached because they're failing. That just kind of sets a bad precedent moving forward. You always got to work. So
Right. I had that talk with somebody. I think it was on Twitter. A coach, we were talking, and there was a discussion about what makes a player better. Is it talent or is it hard work? And my first question on there was, okay, well, first of all, define what talent is, because it's, in my opinion, and from the hard data that I've been able to read, shows that it is skill development.
It is.
Now somebody came back to me and says, well, talent in their opinion would be someone who might have a fast twitch muscle, type 2A and B and C, or they're better at this or this. I'm like, okay. And Usain Bolt was the example. I said, okay, he's physically gifted, but I don't. If you want to call that talent, I can go along with that. But he still developed a skill to run. And in golf, you couldn't use just speed. Speed, yes, obviously will make you hit the ball much longer. But golf, last I checked, is played over 4.5 hours over 4 days at a professional golf tournament.
Yep.
It takes a lot more than speed to last that long, especially if you have fast twitch muscles. Okay, what's your ability to do that over or duration? I mean, that what if you look in the animal kingdom. I mean, deer can run a hell of a lot faster than we can. What humans have over deer is we have endurance. We can track them for hours and days if needed. If you want to go back in time, so I'm total agreement with you. And it is like that kid did. You do not learn a skill by just being purely talented or having a natural ability like Ryan Howard at 6'4", 250.
Right. And in our game, I think golf is gifted with a lot of great coaches, a lot of instructors that are very talented in what they do. I think baseball, it's such a broad spectrum because you don't get the information from Miguel Cabrera that probably he could give because he's so just been gifted at it that he doesn't know how to even coach himself. He knows his flaws.
He's done it for so long.
He's done it for so long that he wouldn't know how to coach it. That's why you don't see a lot of guys that, like, I'll be honest, I'm the only one in the Southeast that played pro ball, that played at a SEC level as a hitting guy, to own a facility and do hitting and be a high school coach as well, won a state championship. Like, there's a lot of things that it shouldn't be a rarity. It should be something that
should be the norm.
It should be the norm. Like, it should be required to not just have a resume, but just have success on top of it in front of you, right? Hey, our guys are doing this, and here's the track man. Or our guys have done this from this time. Look at the video. It shouldn't be, hey, I work with Justin Turner, one guy, and I make him this, but I failed at 50 others because I only believe in one approach. There's a lot of those guys out there where they believe in one cookie cut system that has success for one big leaguer that they had. You couple that with they're 60, 65 years old, and everybody just trusts and assume that they can do that. And they can't because everyone's unique in their own way. So that's in our area down here, I am seen as they call me the mad scientist. Let's put it that way. Right. So and I keep telling them, like, hey, just come in the facility, man. Like, come see what we do. Right. Like, what we do is seen as so different because you don't understand it. It's not anything different than 100 years ago. It's the same thing. Ted Williams talks about it. Babe Ruth talks about it. Like, you listen to those guys long enough, we're teaching the same thing. We just have ways to track it. We have more technology to view it, to replay it, to analyze it, to re-see it, to rethink it.
That's what I think is happening. I've had a number of professor doctors on the show. I've had a number of extremely high-level teachers that work in unison with these doctors and do the research and development. And the things that I was very interested on is what they talk about and what they lecture on, and then what the masses of the golf instructional community start saying. There is a subtle disconnect. You can even consider a major disconnect to where a lot of these top-level coaches will have the TrackMans, the flight scopes, you go down the list of things, hack motion, all these things, but they're not using it on every single swing or exclusively. They're using it to measure what their thought process is going through on how to fix a student, and then they're using it to test it to see what changes that they made and how far along that development curve that has gotten them.
That's right. That's what we do it here.
It's a supplement to their coaching on what they've developed over a lifetime of watching thousands and thousands of swings.
Right now, they're seeing their eyes are being matched on a piece of paper or a screen.
Yes, and they're learning as they're going through. They're deciphering. Their head is deciphering these things.
I keep telling people that too. Like, I'm learning things, and I just figured out something I've been trying to figure out for 9+ years of hitters, and we can talk a little bit about that. But seeing with having video, having the TrackMan tagged, watching things over time, as we start to make mechanical changes, we start to isolate the idea I've been trying to figure out for almost a decade. And without those tools, without those items, I would never have asked the questions of why can't he do this, or why haven't we gotten there, or why does it look this way? You can sit there and dissect it all you want and tell it, hey, we can go throw med balls, we can go do a training rehab, I can do thoracic movement stuff, I can do different, screenings, all that stuff, but it's still not going to get to the player of why it's valuable, because training and all that stuff in the weight room and physically, that takes time, right? Like we don't have time when I have a 23-year-old that's independent ball that's been a 15-round draft pick. Like he's got to know it now.
Mm-hmm.
And is super athletic. Like those superhuman athletic people, like they make changes faster than anybody else. Like you don't have to go around and piece it by piece. You can put the whole thing on them, tell them what they need to do, attack them, right, with an environment or setup, and let them go. And if they don't figure it out, they'll ask a question. Why can't I figure it out? Oh, this, and this. And they make those changes. So it's a lot of the technology I love because it's starting to put my eyes on paper, on data, to replay it for our hitters and replay it for our clinics, replay it for college coaches, those type of things that we can give them of progress.
Yes,
So,
it can show them the progress, and it can show. I think it's as all this data collection in the information age is becoming, or it's being collected. I mean, mounds, and I don't even know the correct terminology. Well past terabytes of information.
oh yeah,
And it's like, okay, what they're learning is what we knew from step one, is that, well, everybody's different.
that's right.
Right. It's like,
And that's where you start, right? That's where people should start. Everybody is different. Now, I'll tell you in our game, and I don't know in the golf world as much because I haven't been exposed to that. I have a friend of mine that just has a flight scope. I'm gonna go do that. I've done some speed testing a little bit with PXG fitter. So, my speed is, sitting there with, I think, one of the pro courses up in Atlanta. The guy, he trains one of the pro guys there, and I start swinging, and he walks over from his lesson, and he just asked a question, baseball player. And I said, yes, sir. He goes, you guys have so much speed, you don't even know how hard it is to train that being a golfer, right? And to me, it's what I've done forever, right? Like if I don't swing it violently, then I'm going to get beat, right? So I think that's where golf is going, right? But you have to organize it, right? Speed has always been
efficiency of motion. First, you got to have the efficiency before you can start level or cranking up the speed.
That's right. So when I'm swinging the club at 125 and the ball is 180, but I have 4,000 spin on it, all he has to do is take a shaft or the club, the loft, or all that stuff gets changed. Then all of a sudden my ball starts becoming straight and I'm hitting it 310, 315 and straight, So like I've got a 7, degree driver and I've got a Tennessee black shaft in it that's aftermarket shaft that I can the guy's literally telling me, hey, try to pull it. And I can't because the shaft is finally catching up to everything that the power has to transfer out. So like bat fittings for us is happening. Micah Gibbs down, in I think Louisiana, in the emergency lab, they are on the cutting edge of all of that with their big league players. That's a very unique thing in my world. We're getting into it with True Temper. So True Temper is allowing us to be a professional bat fitter company for them with the data based, results. So, dude, it is a speaking technology. It is a world of its own in baseball and how a private sector is using it to develop. A lot of guys use it for, the cloud of the social media, and we tend to. There's a lot going on here behind the scenes for our hitters that not everybody sees. Hence why we're trying to make a YouTube channel of what actually goes on around here, because it just seems to be everybody says how good it is and this and that. Well, we're going to start showing how hard it is to get the player to mentally be aware. Physically comes after that, to get them to understand why it's valuable to make the changes. And then they make those changes and you see results. And then you go, man, and we get fired up in here when we see those kids make those changes. Not a lot of guys do that. They kind of just, they're low key and low energy. That ain't us.
Is someone who was a pro baseballer, and you had mentioned how you through your career and in your development, you were taught you got to go after it, and as you said, golf is now catching up to that. What are the the similarities in the golf swing and the baseball swing? Because as we talked
So
about very early on, I was told the same when I played baseball: don't go play golf in baseball season, and you were told that don't swing a golf club.
sure.
And as I was talking to Jeff today about it, we were getting into this a little bit, and I said, look, it's really one's in a tilted plane, one's in a vertical plane, and you're swinging
Hmm.
horizontally or perpendicular that plane the entire time.
Hmm.
But I mean, you go ahead and talk about it. I throw that question
So
out to you.
I'll give you mentioned Jeff. I'll give you a good example of where understanding a background of a player for me is huge. Like the churches play a lot of golf, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
very good. They're very above average amateur golfers, right? So EJ, their son, plays at Grange. We had an issue with EJ in the baseball sense of translating exactly what mechanical thoughts we were thinking and what we wanted to see until I finally made the connection with golf, right? And understanding a little bit of the golf swing and how you go about it, because EJ can get out there and hit it 320 in the air and putt it and chip it better than anybody. Well, you don't see that very often when I was growing up, where kids even were good at golf because they were told that you couldn't do it. So to make some changes for him, we identified a little bit of the dynamics that Bryson has been doing. Old school Roy McIlroy, where he was really gaining a lot of speed.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Tiger Woods, a lot of mechanically speaking Tiger Woods before everything blew up. Getting off the ground, a lot of dynamics. Now, in terms of mechanical pieces, so for me, understanding what a sway is, right, in baseball came from golf, right? So in sway in baseball used to be, you would kind of rock back and forth, and you wouldn't really gain ground, right? So in golf, it's understanding that if my knee leaks over, if my hip gets over my back foot per se, when I'm trying to load up the swing, that's a sway. It's not on the end of the swing; it's in the load.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of changed the way that I thought about the baseball swing in general. Then I looked at the golf, where the main key the thing I really bought into, was struggle for me, was this idea that when I pull the club back, when I'm getting into that I guess negative move, if you will, the club head needs to stay closed. Well, it was hard for me to understand how I get my right wrist to bend and hinge as I'm trying to load without the club flicking behind my back and getting it too deep. So then the lag becomes out and around the golf ball, creating my slice. So understanding what we call in baseball the bridge, understanding that loading up the energy is great unless your hands and your wrist are using it without any manipulation. So TPI talks about it, the segmented joints of mobile and stable, right? And if they're, interrupted or whatever, the manipulation occurs. So with that concept, we looked at the ground up, understanding the golf swing with a little bit of, knowledge and playing, and understanding I'm getting a little bit better in the golf and just having to play more. It really helps with this idea, but loading up the wrist and loading up that back elbow and loading up where that bridge happens and keeping it connected to your ribs, right, in golf, and it is really understanding you have to clear the front side. If you don't clear the front side with your hips, none of this will happen. In baseball, that is the worst term you could ever say, right? If I told a player to clear their hips violently, then everybody would think they would out and round it and wrap it and hit balls on the ground, or just swing and miss. What they call is flying open. Well, once we identified with me and EJ, we talk on a constant basis, and Jeff, about how impressive these younger golfers are at getting the front side cleared. So allow their hinge and their bend and their side bend and their thoracic outlet, all that stuff, to start to get the correct, attack angles and launch angles, and it increases our speed. I think Joaquin Nevin's a good example of how trainable speed is in golf,
Mm-hmm.
by simply, understanding how your body moves, right, and understanding how to hinge it and keep it connected. I'm not going to say, I hate the word connected, but keeping it where your palm at contact is going up through it, instead of where I look at it, my brain sees the club like Rory get real left real quick, so I think I have to cut it. And that's what creates my slice even more. So playing back and forth, I love watching the video of Bryson DeChambeau hitting a baseball. Okay, because the dynamics of the swing pattern is completely different when the ball moves. Okay, now speed is speed. Okay, Bryson hits a ball 95 off a tee. There's not a lot of humans doing that, right? If you're playing baseball at the college level, power fives, you're doing that. Okay, so that's an elite speed, right? But when you start looking at the swing, how it broke down when the ball is just on a front flip, okay, the way it's loaded is completely different.
What would be the front flips if people out there don't
So
know the
front flip would
terminology?
be like a guy 20 feet from you, underhanding it slowly to you. Now, not a lot of pressure there. Anybody that's been in baseball would love to hit off front flips more than anything. So once the ball started to move, his complete pattern just broke down. Now the speed was still there, right? The dysfunction in the stable and mobile joints that was happening, right? It was 1 out of 10. One ball he hit was the 95, right? That he hit off a tee, right? So in baseball terms, you're never going to go anywhere if you can't consistently, unload that power and get to that bat speed and tap into some of that juice and power consistently, right? So taking that back, I took that back, and me and EJ sat down and we were talking as I'm playing golf during the summer. I've only been a golfer for a year and a half, so really feeling some of the movements and challenging myself to get rid of this idea of my eyes flat through the swing, so level to the ground, perpendicular to the ground, parallel, whatever you want to call it. The idea of a golfer rotating their head and getting underneath that ball helped me tremendously. Letting the body turn, letting the speed directed underneath the swing rather than where we were taught was to get inside the golf ball or inside the baseball. Mm-hmm. You get your hands and knob inside the baseball, right? All that speed is going to work. Well, that doesn't work in golf, right? So watching Bryson gain the speed, I'm seeing the underneath the bottom of the swing being where the speed is generated, and how you get to that point is crucial in terms of not allowing, any dysfunction to happen. So the swing in golf, your feet aren't moving. Really, you're loading not too much. The ball's not coming at you, right? You're looking down at it, so you can set your posture. You can set a lot of predetermine some things that we can't. Because if you do that, you're vulnerable for other things. So the posture for me, I think learning 35 to 40 degrees tilt in the hips to the spine and that hinge in the pelvic area, I think is key. We try to get that in baseball, right? That's pretty much a number everybody's trying to attack.
Right.
So that's pretty much universal. The open foot, right? So I read something TPI today is 25 to 30 degrees or maybe even more of opened in the front side foot, right? That just speaks to us trying to clear our hips and try to get that out. Well, baseball for generations has never wanted that foot open. They think it flies over.
No, they always wanted it pigeon-toed, the foot
that's
inverted,
right.
Not everted.
That's right. So when it's inverted like that, and I give steroids credit, man. Like when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa and these guys are hitting home runs, like you start to see how you go about that more than you ever have. But in golf and seeing that that foot being opened and allowing them to be more violent up through the ground, right, it's a fascinating thing for me because there's no reason why baseball players can't do that. Because I'm taking considerations of things that these hitters come to me, they can do. One is they can hit the baseball, right? They're just not hitting it the way they want to or consistently, right? The second thing is they have to understand that they're going to swing and miss, that they're going to fail before more times than not, because that's just our game. Now in golf, I think it's a little, you see those guys get very frustrated off the drive when they hit it, in the fairway or right outside the rough. They're in the second, third cut rather than they only missed it by 20 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 20 feet to them is a massive, speed problem because of how much speed they're gaining and how much it can play into manipulation. So I love this piece right here, the Justin Thomas piece, where he has this go get it swing off the drive, and he's got this just fairway finder that's 178, 180. So when he wants to go get one, you have the heel off the ground. That's a baseball swing. Like if you land on your heel in a baseball swing and that stable joint becomes, very stable very quickly, all your your mobile ones get locked pretty quickly. And then you get out and around it and you have problems, you strike zone, all that stuff becomes an issue. So watching him do that and going after that and seeing how much more rhythmic it is to me because it's matching more of the baseball swing. Dude, I flip out. I have to replay it 15 times. So I'm watching him. I think the concept of the downswing, what I call the pull down phase in our baseball swing, I think is a little different in our worlds because of the fact the ball is stationary in a golf swing. You get to manipulate how you uncoil it. With the variables of a baseball swing, you can't really, you can get into the same positions. However, if the ball's elevated, I can't be so at bottom, underneath the ball in the swing pattern and the speed. Now, I'm not saying we're not trying to get underneath it. I'm not saying that, but getting on plane on an upper, top of the zone fastball is a little different in terms you have to shallowing it out. So, and in golf, if you shallow quickly and that lag starts to become, more towards the golf ball, you lose a lot of speed and you lose a lot of the ball striking ability. In terms of just the speed that you're carrying with that little bitty ball that has all that technology in the the bladed clubs you're not using, there's not much of a miss hit, an area for that. So, thinking of in terms of what's different, okay, in our baseball swing, we're never taught to let our eyes and our head rotate. Let it out. Let it go. Right. A lot of guys are taught to keep it square, keep their shoulders square, and don't let it turn. Right. And in golf, that is a different aspect. If your shoulders are flat, like you're probably not playing golf. You're playing something else. If your head's not rotating underneath the golf ball, you're not letting your eyes out and letting it go and letting it rotate. You'll never swing the club with the ball speeds to be on tour. So difference there. I think the pull down phase in terms of where that comes from and how long it stays in there is different than the baseball swing. I think the similarities play. For instance, we teach the pull down phase of the swing to happen at the front foot. Well, it's the same in golf, right? You're really pulling it down to the front foot. You're just not for as long as we would be. So in terms of the downswing, we're trying to get it perpendicular to our spine in golf and keep those lines at impact and all those good angles to let the club elevate the ball. So in my world, trying to elevate mechanically was never taught. Well, we get to teach that now because they've been taught line drives and down on the ball. When we let them try to elevate it, it frees them up. Right, so a lot of the bad work that they were doing actually played in the positive. So when we're doing this, when I'm playing golf, when EJ's playing golf, the concept of a ball being on a tee, a quarter, inch and a quarter or 2 inches, however you want to put it, off the ground, puts it 100 feet in the air by swinging only 2 degrees at it, or I think the tour guys are 2 to 3 degrees on attack. Like it blows our mind.
You mean the direction of ascent
Yes.
on the golf? Yeah,
Yes.
well, I mean, a lot of guys on the tour, some of them are down, some are level, some are a few degrees up. It's the ladies who get that 4 to 7 degrees up in the ball.
That's right, and I think it's amazing, and I think, and Bryson talks about that, like how that angle plays into longer drives without having to be a long, ball speed, club speed, all that kind of stuff.
Yes,
So for
ideally in
us,
golf, if your path is moving up, but the shaft angle to some extent is moving closer to the target, so you're decreasing the loft as the path of the club is moving upwards.
yes,
That's where you're going to you're going to maximize the launch conditions.
yes, that change right there is the difference in a baseball and golfer, in my opinion. That's the hardest thing, because when we're trying to elevate baseballs, when we're trying to do that, right, and get it on the uphill tick, if you will, with our bat, it is very, it's very difficult because of the pitch selections and the shapes of the pitches.
Well, and the ball's coming in on descending motion.
That's right. It's coming down on us. So now I will tell you this: we've put that to the test. I've put it to the test swinging in here. Some of our guys have put it to the test. I don't think that that's as big as a gap as it should be. I think that the angle will help you organize the swing much like a golfer, because you have to get to the bottom first to work your way back up.
Mm-hmm.
If your bottom is going against that angle, down on it, right, it's just not going to work mechanically, plus the results. So seeing with that information, learning how valuable, internal rotation and getting out of your hips while maintaining the posture of a golf swing underneath the bottom half of the swing, and where that swing and speed needs to be and how all that energy is played out, we start to put it in our hitters. Now, they don't know this, by the way. Like, our hitters don't know that a lot of our concepts have come from the golf world, because it's, to me, if anything is similar, you can put this down. When a guy puts his foot down in a baseball swing, we are in the exact same positions. It may be longer and different than that, but you're in the same positions as the top of the swing of a golf club. So how you uncoil that and organize that speed is super similar. If you have any dysfunction, any manipulation, right, with the golfer, you may get away with it just because there's no ball coming at you at 95. In baseball, you do that, you're not getting away with anything.
Mm-mm.
If you have any issues in the load pattern to get you to the ground, you're having a problem on the way out. And we don't even start there. It's like when a guy comes in here, I don't know about in golf, but if a guy's slicing or this and that, I think that there's a couple cues you tend to use, especially with amateurs. You're doing certain things wrong, and you can correct that pretty easily. Or it's a shaft or a ball or whatever. In baseball, if I have a guy that is, bowing out the backside leg, the hips and the posture, we're standing up, we're coming down, there's a lot of setup problems in the load that I will never look at the ball. The only thing I look at in technology when that is if they have what I consider a doo-doo swing, a not very good swing, and we've got high velocity, bro, there is big time rewards. And if we change a couple things and take some risk on fixing it, so I'll give you an example. We took a kid with the downhill swing, line drives, all being taught to him, meaning it was getting on plane with our pitch. Well, it wasn't, because when you're going down and the ball's ascending, that's not going to work. You're getting on top of it, and then you get bottom half of the swing, and that speed takes over, and you end up foul clipping it, getting out early, all kinds of other problems. So we took that idea. We took the front side clearing. We literally did this yesterday. The kid's 15 years old. He was 85 to, 89, 90, right? We took this idea. We told him, hey, these are the things we want you to do. We want you to get really violent on the way out towards the pitcher in your move towards the ball. So when you're moving towards me, when that foot hits the ground, I want to see your hips get into that front leg. Okay? When you get to the front leg and you've chosen to swing, this is my favorite concept. I love this golf concept, is keeping your chest covered on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Keep it covered, right? If you're not covering in baseball sense, if you're not moving your chest towards the baseball, towards that direction, you're in trouble. Okay, once it becomes stagnant, everything else works around that and becomes stable, and everything else just can yank around it. Right? There's a concept in one of our kids that's a pro guy. He went from 108 to 114. So that's a different. To gain that kind of speed at that much of a speed difference, that's ridiculous. That's not seen very much. But with this young kid, we took that idea. We told him, hey, look, here's the deal. I know what's going to happen. Right? If you're early and you foul it off and it's a foul ball, who cares? Right? Don't put so much risk into all that stuff. And I think golf talks about a lot. It's choosing your shot. Dedicating it, like all your energy just to that shot, and go see it. Right?
Yeah, staying committed. You're staying committed to the shot.
That's what I hear a lot of the times in golf. I love, because in baseball they don't do that. We tend to let doubt come in and fear come in, and that's when it gets eaten up, just because of the pure, sure, dynamics of the ball coming at you at that kind of velocity. But we talked about with him, hey, take out the fears of striking out, all that stuff. Put in your brain, hey, I'm going to get after this at 30 degrees. Okay, I want you to pop this sucker up, all right, and find the barrel, and do all these little concepts we're talking about, right? Which is, for me, I love the golf similarity is the pelvic move, right? We want to keep the pelvic move centered as we rotate around, the backside hinge, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what guys call it in golf, but I like the negative pelvic move. I don't like a negative hip move, meaning I don't like it moving side to side in that plane.
Negative pelvic move. You mean where you're working in the flexion with the pelvis?
Yes. That's where we want to live in the baseball swing. That's not talked about a lot in ours, but just because it's not identified what a load really means, what it really means to gain energy through the ground, and how you transfer it out. there's a lot of inefficiency with kids with that because they don't, they're not mature enough their body isn't to handle some of that stuff. But in terms of the pelvic move and the negative move, we want to see that move backwards, away from the pitcher, right? As I'm going towards the pitcher, I want to see it stay in that negative away from the pitcher. I want to create that X factor stretch, or whatever you want to call it in the body, to create that snap. And then once you get it, and here's the problem, I think in golf is learning this. The fear of speed, the fear of the negative of too much speed, you got to get that out of your head. There's no such thing as too much speed. There's too much speed in the wrong direction, right? Like that's all part of the coach to identify that, right? Like, we don't want to go left quick in the baseball swing, but in golf, you kind of do. Like you want to get it left as a right-handed swing to get it left, and don't try to extend it. Don't try to get your club all the way through the launch angle like we were taught. In golf, you make it's such a fast, ball to club head, the face of that club interaction that you don't have to worry about staying through it. Just hit the sucker and get out. So we learned the concept of, and we're talking about little bitty concepts. However, when you're talking about speed and gaining speed, the little bitty ones is what matters. So I don't even know. Let's talk similarities. Similarities. When the foot's down, we call it launch angle. You call it, it's just the top of the swing for you guys. Okay, where I want to see is the pelvic, where I want to see the pressure, where I want to see the knob. What we call the knob is you're just the
butt end of the club,
the butt end of the club,
the handle. Yeah,
where that is in relation to how you loaded it and how you started it is key for us in baseball. It's key for golf. Talk about that out, that out away from the body kind of swing to let the club head get underneath to level it and get that good shot to stay inside the ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, if I'm loading outwards, that's no good. However, if you start outwards and load up inside the body, out through, that creates a rhythm and momentum that we can use. We use that with players. We start their hands out away from them, almost like straight across, and they learn how to load it in that window, get it back into that window, much like a golf swing. So similarities, top of the swing, launch for us. Okay, then it's the initial pull down. Right. Any mechanical flaws you want to see come from the initial pull down, in my opinion. Now, when you're watching PGA, there's very rarely any issues with those guys until it's just a commitment issue. You watch an amateur golf swing, you'll see some issues when they initially pull it down,
mm-hmm.
whether they're dumping the pelvic, whether, you get the hands going across, whether you get the shoulders going first, which I did too. When I first started, I would get that sway. I think I'd have to move and sway down to the ball, and that's what created the slice. Can't really catch up. So learning where, that happens and what you can do, how to use your legs, right? So when you get to the top, the initial move, same identifier for us, and flaws and key pattern problems come from the top. Okay, once they start the downswing and start to unload, I want to see that front side leg, right? So for us, same similar. If I have pressure into the front knee to the front hip, the posture is there, right? We are allowed now to utilize speed. If we are not, if it locks out too quick, if it becomes too stable too quick, all that speed is going to go, it's all for naught. It's a waste. You're all manipulating from there. So when we land in the baseball swing, I want to see toe hit, then the heel, the ball of the foot, then the heel. And once that's there, the initial move forward with the pelvic, I want to see the pelvic move while the knob, let's say the butt of the club, is staying behind us. Right, that's going to allow us to create lag, create speed, create a lot of things in the baseball swing that is very similar in golf. Right, we want to come around our spine in golf just as much as we do in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar. Right, we want to create that perpendicular between the spine and the club and the shaft and the baseball. Same way. It's 90 degrees in blast motion for us. I think it's just a way of life for you guys. So when we talk about that similarity there, then we go into just the position at contact, how we present the club head, how we present the barrel. They're very similar. If my this is very drastic difference, but if my baseball bat is level with my hands, that is not going to be good, especially when you have speed players. If you don't have a speed player and it's not a guy that can swing it with some velocity, you can get away with that. Okay, a lot of naturally gifted speed players, they tilt their shoulders to match the tilt of the barrel and the tip of their tilt in their pelvic. So when I'm watching golf, the same thing applies. If I've got a very, 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 very um, lax, lacticity there in their hips, and they're mobile in their spine, and like a Joaquin Neiman, whatever, that guy, to get to those posture swings, you've got to clear the front side. You've got to let the front side clear and get stable to go through the ground, get out of the pelvic, and let your hands get to the bottom of the swing. So with us, it's the same thing applies. If I see a kid that is getting flat quick, we literally take him and show him what the knob does and why it's a circle and why it works moving, up underneath the body out instead of out and around. So you see a lot of the golfers, they take that one-handed, swing, and they let that kind of that initial move for them to start their swing. And you start to see, which is really cool, is what Jordan Spieth is doing. That's a baseball move. Like what he's doing with that little wiggle.
He's got that different move, that pre-shot routine that he's been doing this year.
That's right. And I do this way. I heard it on, I think it was on CBS. Faldo was talking about he doesn't know why he's doing that move away from the shot. Right? He's doing it. He's turning his back to the course. And in my mind, when I'm sitting there watching it, I'm going, man, that's pretty simple to me, because the move he's making isn't about the shot he's about to take. It's just about the move to allow him to do the shots he wants to see.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets up there and he pre-routines it, much like Tony Finau. He does that a little bit. He kind of gets that little wiggle, that waggle of the club. And a little bit of Bubba Watson does that too. If you really watch him and his pre-routines, he don't have much, but you watch a little bit of him, he has that waggle to it. So that's, for us, that's feeling what we call the whip, feeling where the weight of the bat is where you whip it, and where that weight is, and organizing that. So when I'm watching PGA Tours, I'm watching some of these elite swingers, John Rahm, Justin Thomas, Morikawa. One thing is similar to that not a lot of people are going to talk about. The way that they load up the swing, all right, is very unique, and it needs to stay unique. If it becomes very similar to other guys, then that's where we have an issue. All right, so you're starting to see a very uniqueness, more unique ways to swing the golf club, I think, you ever have. The same applies in baseball, because you're starting to see the reasons why in baseball, and the data behind it, the movement screenings, and why they have to do certain things different than others. And you'll start to see a little bit, more of those guys' unique swing patterns that are coming through college, that have been through this whole data era, much like the golf swing. So seeing some of the new swings, the Cameron Youngs of the world, and some of these guys that are young coming up, man, they use the ground so violently. I'm trying to figure out how they do that. So I go back and look at some of my swings. Well, some of my swings back then, I'm using the ground the same way. It comes with sheer violence. I don't think, if you don't commit to the violence, I think that's when the flaws come in golf. I purely think that. Now, ball striking, me and EJ talk about this all the time, and Jeff talk about it. I can hit it on the nose if I'm at the driver, I can hit it off the deck. I can hit it if I'm standing in a baseball swing. The club to ball is not my problem. All right. It is matching speed, matching how violent I want to get out of that, and not trying to manipulate it. And where my manipulation comes from, and I think a lot of golfers that are learning or going to try to learn speed have got to understand that speed happens with a commitment of speed. Okay, you start there. Then you start to understand how your body is going to react to that commitment. Okay, then you have to make adjustments to what you're feeling. So for me, I started opening up my front foot. All right, I started, instead of opening it up, I offset it as well. So that allows me to turn my head, to turn my body, to turn my spine, to match, to keep my hand and my elbow, my wrist tight instead of out and around, and getting it out and extended, per se, in baseball. So I think a lot of the speed training pieces are valuable in both worlds. Now, the bottom of the swing and how I think Bryson's trying to do it, I think he's going to kill his body. I think it's already showing up, some of the things he's trying to do, but he's on the forefront of learning it. He's on the forefront of testing how fast you can swing it. But you look at some of those long drive competition guys, man. Like if controlling that swing, if you have to control that, it's not valuable, right? So like that Berkshire guy, you watch some of his swings and how he's
Oh,
making the
he just
changes.
I forget what he eclipsed last week. I mean, it's it's amazing the speeds that he's swinging at.
Yep. And you look at like as a swing coach, a guru guy, if you will, dude, I want that for our baseball guys. I want them to, and I always say in here all the time, quit training pretty. Like quit being so pretty. Like you dude, get nasty with it. You're gonna have to get nasty with it to understand what 100% looks like. I guarantee you, Pete, if you go out to the tour and you ask the guys to swing it as hard as they can, right? Have you ever swung it as hard as you can? I guarantee the answer would be no, because it's not it's seen as negative because they can't control it.
That's the
Which is
impressive thing about Bryson is as hard as he's swinging and his ability to keep the ball in play at those speeds because the variable jumps up very quickly for him at 100 and what's he swinging 135 miles an hour. 1 degree off at that speed is magnified much greater than it
so
is at 112.
that's right. To me, so I'm going to take it in a player perspective. We talked a little bit about elite hitter versus an average hitter. Okay, so to me, the variables of missed hitting it or unloading it are decreased because he's swinging full speed. There's no hey, I got to get to this point, or hey, I got to swing at this percentage, or hey, I got to swing at this smoothly. No, it's the same repetitive move every time. It takes out the variable of percentage of effort, of intensity, right? And puts into, hey, how is my body feeling? Right? That's where I go back to our baseball training environment is if I'm Bryson and I'm out there and I feel a little tired, right? And I'm not doing, I'm going right a little bit. I'm slicing it. Well, that's probably because you're unloading the hips faster than the hands, and the club is just not getting closed at impact, right? So rather than keeping or backing down the speed or changing shafts or anything like that, how about we try to close the foot off, lock yourself out, and force yourself to that direction, that speed to get closed. So a lot of what we do here is challenging what we're seeing and go very, very drastic the opposite direction. So if we have a kid that's not feeling, like he can stay on a ball to the right side, opposite side of the field, right? Instead of closing him off, we will open him up and force him to go after that direction and that move correctly. And for that day, when we come in the next day, hey, he may have that down already, and we have another issue that may be present. All that becomes just like Bryson. When I show up to the course, and I've hit 100,000 balls at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. when nobody's out there, I'm a little tired. I don't care what kind of training you do. Like your output's going to be a little lower that day.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand, and I think he's going to learn it, where his output and where the flaws become when he feels a certain way. That concept, if he learned that in high school, he'd be unstoppable. He'd be unbeatable because the courses change as much as the body changes, and it's a grueling season. So he would be the most prepared to adapt to Augusta, to adapt to the Genesis Invitational, to adapt to the U.S. Open, because he has the ways to manipulate it and keep and gain the speed. So and not lose it, right? Would not have to back it down, not have to use 3-wood, but go driver, or take the 7-iron out instead of the 4-iron, or whatever, because he can cut it now instead of have to draw it, or whatever the shot he's trying to take. So I think you're seeing some advantages from what Bryson's doing. I think the challenge will become what you're talking about, the block and variable training. I think that's why my brain's going more towards variable, because those guys are already speed. They strike the ball well. They do a lot of things, but none of them have been full speed. Like, what if Tony Finau had been full speed? Like they always say, he could drive it with the best of them.
Right, he
Well,
does. He's
why are
got.
we not? Why are we not letting him drive it the way he wants to drive it? Or what his body is telling him, because he's fought against that. In my opinion, he's fought against the full swing speed that his natural body wants to take. We've had to manipulate our driver, our 3-wood, our 5-wood, our 7-wood, all of the clubs in the bag that have got to change based off of that one swing because that's the most speed oriented swing.
Well, there is a lot. I mean, in the information age that we live in, and part of the reason this podcast is called Golf 360 is it's all encompassing. I mean, here I'm talking. I've had Marine colonels on, Fortune 50 CEOs. You as a baseball guy on a golf podcast, and for anyone that wonders why, I'm like, well, first of all, you've obviously gone over the similarities. We've been discussing the similarities in the two swings, but it's like with this massive data collection, I think we're going to start to find out, well, should this individual be swinging harder or should they not? Because I had Dr. Richard Geyer on. He's the world famous spinal surgeon that does disc replacement, which is amazing that disc replacement is basically outpatient surgery or one night in the hospital just for observation. But one of the things that he told me was in the last couple of years as speed training has been increasing due to the popularity, Bryson playing a large role in that. Is what they see in their clinic is from the local college golf teams, and I can't remember the exact ratio he gave me, but it was something like 20-1 guys are coming into the clinic with back issues compared to the girls as far as college level. And he said that they talk to these kids, and most of these guys are trying to swing harder, or faster. Take your pick, either one. But there's got to be some point where to your point, yes, swing faster and swing as hard as you can, especially with the driver. But then at some point, where do you gear back?
That's right. I think, and that's what I was going to get to is where we push the envelope with our players when we first get. How do we get when we get to a kind of a constant in our velocities and our exit? We're seeing the same numbers, right? Why are we not growing? Because you should see some growth as these kids are getting older, anyway, right? And just the bodies are changing. So that's when we input our speed ladder, our speed training.
Mm-hmm.
Go as fast as you can, push the envelope of your newfound physical attributes, mental, whatever you want to put in, right? And let's see how far we can push the envelope. And then once we find it, right, like once we find what full speed looks like, then we go back to, hey, how do we control the speed? How do we go about it? Not that we try to swing slower. How do we make it more efficient and more consistent? So like when you're learning, this is what the problem is in speed. In any way, speed and direction. If direction is wrong, the speed is going to kill you.
Right.
So how you're learning how to do that is valuable, but with the understanding of how you're organizing it to be consistent at whatever you're trying to do. So I've never heard of like a female being told, hey, your driver's too erratic, right? Like you have to back it down to be more accurate. Well, when we're finding out that the longer the driver, right, not the less accurate, because those guys are typically accurate what they're doing, but they miss more fairways, but they're closer, they have shorter irons, and they have better chances to score. Right? You still have to putt it, but you have better chances. So you're seeing these Justin Thomases who are just naturally gifted with speed start to add in that extra gear that even Tiger Woods talked about. And it's fascinating that those type of players are wanting to add more speed to the swing and risk and chance it. But I think that goes to what you're talking about is you're starting to see the trickle down in the youth department of speed being at the forefront of training. Right. I don't know, and I could be wrong. I don't know the golf world enough to know that they're equipped to deal with younger players just getting after it and training it all the time.
Well, I think TPI has brought that to the forefront as far as golf is, but you can go back to the Russians in the 40s and even the Bulgarians back 100 years ago in the 20s and the turn of the last century in the weight training protocols that one took from the other, and then it's made its way through sporting world and society. For those who are willing to go look it up, that there are certain windows that the kids should train for speed. For example, as we're discussing it, that if they miss that window, they can't go back and redevelop it.
Yeah,
Right? I can't
awesome.
remember. It's been many years since I never read deep into it. I've read some of it. Let's say between 9 and 11, for example, that's a kid's window for boys, and I think it might be even earlier for girls. Once that window closes, you can't go back and reopen it.
That's right, and that's why. I mean, you watch the hip turns of the women golf swings. I think that you could learn a lot about the speed and the swing from them because I just watching them, they get after it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they get after it smoothly, and their hips just they're way in front of basically all the males in terms of how violent that turn actually is. Now, it's not with the same speed, but it's more violent. Like they're getting out of it quicker to let the swing happen faster at the
That
bottom.
whipping action where the club
That's
head is
whipping.
the tip of the whip.
That's right. And I think that's where we can learn a lot. But I'll tell you, Tiger Woods, as great as he is, I think that's why he was as great as he was. I think that the violence he had as a young player, I mean, getting after it and really pushing it, you know, I think that that's kind of the change in technology helped him out as well, keep him sustainable in his career. But he always talks about the swing pattern changes he was making, right? Like he always talks about the swings. He's always trying to refine it and tune it and be good at it. I think as the technology was changing, right, the ball's not moving as much. It's got, you know, more technology into it, so you can't move it as much. Club heads are a little bit different. The shafts have increased, but the one thing remained the same with him. The damn swing didn't. It was still violent as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we see why the body is hurting, the back's breaking down, a lot of things that, I mean, it's a 20-year career. Like the guy has, you can't argue with what he did, even if it breaks down or not. Like that's a unheard of, but I think he's the front end of all of what we're talking about of the value of swinging the way you swing, swinging with that speed and that direction. And it's okay to do that and not have to back it down. Because I've never seen a swing of him trying to drive the ball. It always looks like he's going to hammer it, so he just
Right.
goes.
Just
You know what I
hit
mean?
it hard and go get it.
Yeah, just hit it hard and pick it up. Like I don't know how many masters I watched him hit him out of pine straw, and he's winning them, and everybody else is in the fairway still having troubles. You know, so like the scrambling off the tee, like really good scrambler, but he was also a really good scrambler because he's 80 yards in front of you. You know, so like I, that's moving into the similarities. Like we have the same similarities here. If you have any doubt and you can't swing the club, and drive line in baseball is ahead of all this stuff in terms of the value of bat speed, the value of swinging that baseball bat as fast as you can control physically, right, gives you more windows of opportunities and greater for success. That's they tracked in the big leagues. The MVPs swing it the fastest,
Yeah,
right? The extra velocity is the
baseball
highest.
is way ahead of golf in terms of training,
That's right.
heavier weightlifting, getting more
That's
mass,
right.
and
You
swinging
have
as
to.
fast as you possibly can,
That's
and
right. You
using
have
weight
to.
training to do it.
That's right. And I think that the cool connection here I'm making between why they're valuable, why you can learn from both, is golf is in the transition period of speed. So seeing how they golfers can learn from the variables of baseball, in my opinion, right? I think that the training piece of it is they should be the same. I think the way that the body is trained should be the same. The hinge in the thoracic and the spine angle and the posture are, if I pulled up hockey, golf, baseball, they're all similar. The only thing that people don't make the connection is the different pitches in baseball. There's different planes and ways to go about them.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing remains the same. All of the lower half issue, the clearing of the hips, the staying, in the posture pelvis and all that stuff that is underneath the frame, keeping the ball cut, your chest covering the ball. All of that is, whether it's high, low, out, in, up, now, it's all the same. It's all the same. Now, picking up a bat, picking up a bat and my driver in my bag right here is a little different, just in the weight sense. However, the bottom of that swing, wherever our pitch is the same. In my opinion, in swinging both,
Yeah,
in
they're
my
both
opinion.
yeah, they're both swinging on an arc, or
That's
right
right.
on a tilted plane to a large. Even though a batter is not standing completely vertical, so they're not swinging parallel to the ground. They're in a tilted plane.
Yes.
So they're
Yes.
swinging down in the first half, they're swinging up on the second half.
That's right. Now, what
Just
the
not
cool
as
part,
much as a golfer is.
say we're talking a lot about the driver. Now, what really is cool for technology purposes in transitioning speed to an iron shot is when I pick up my 8 iron, I have to know that I need to get down on it by 4 or 5 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I get to swing down finally with speed because my club is going to cut through that grass more than that bat going down is going to cut through that baseball with success. So I get to now learn. I get to let my hands out down towards the ground, literally towards the bottom, right? And what I'm trying to identify next in our baseball swing is A lot of guys talk about in the golf swing that left hand, that logo on your golf uh, glove pointed towards your target, right? In that pronation phase, if you will, right? Baseball players do that. Baseball players do that at a very high rate, believe it or not. And it's a very small portion of our swing and learning, but that is a directional advantage for a golf swing in making your shot shape that baseball guys can learn from. I think. I don't know if it's something we can train. That's all stuff I have to go dive into. But when you watch some of our elite players that swing it that fast, their left hand, their logo gets to where that pitch is better and pronated than anybody else. And you're starting to see some of that stuff and trying to identify how do we get mechanically sound to use that as an advantage and a tool rather than a hindrance of speed and direction, right? And where that line middle is grounded, where we can find it. So when you talk about the iron shots and wedges and all those swings are a little bit different, but with the same, in my world, the same commitment and speed. So,
Let me ask you about speed because
mhm,
Doc Sasha McKenzie, I don't know if I mean, he's very big in the golfing world. He's a biomechanist from up in Canada, does a lot of great work. He's he's been on the show. He's going to come back on in a couple weeks, and we're going to talk about speed in particular. He's identified, I believe, it's 5 different things that will help increase golfers' ability to increase their swing speed. One of them is being uh, length of hand path. So be that in golf, whether it's closing your stance some, because
mhm,
that kind of cheats your turn in relationship to the ball, right? You're already
mhm,
turned that way, and your hand path in relationship to where the ball is will be going traveling longer. Um,
mhm,
Lifting the front heel,
mhm,
which will aid in getting a longer hand path.
mhm,
Something that you guys wouldn't have is starting your in baseball because you're not starting from the plate. Your hands are already back behind you. Starting the swing not low and slow like the traditional has been. Take it back slow and controlled. Is take it back as fast as you can because the change of direction puts such a force on the handle.
into your body. Yep.
Yes.
Down through the chain.
But without getting too far into that, because what I want to get at is one is do you in baseball do you get to where you want the hands traveling the longest distance, and
Yes.
okay,
So,
and then the other one's the obvious one. The hitters are always picking up their lead foot. Um,
yes.
but to and I got a or a follow up to that question. So I'll get out of the way and let you answer those.
So, in terms of the hand length and being long, right? That's what we call being on plane. That's what we call staying. Well, what a lot of guys call is get depth, right? You want to be on plane longer, short, long through it, short to it is what people say, which they don't understand what that means. But when we talked about in the front of the show, the Barry Bonds' barrel is coming what we call a dump here in our facility, dumping the barrel, towards the plate. Well, and I mean, that's mechanically speaking, but if you say that to a player, that has been like nobody says that. Like that's been a negative term
Well, it's like the
forever.
golf club shallowing out early in the downswing.
Exactly right. So when we learn the reason, and that's what we're, I guess the hard part here is we're talking about speed dynamics and things that are very controllable. Well, what's not controllable is these kids walk in here with all of these negative terms that are against it, and we play against them. We use them in a positive direction. So we let them dump the barrel. We let them fly open. We let them test it and prove it, whether right or wrong, right? And they find out that we reconnect, we redefine what those words really mean and phrases for them. So when they hear them again, they don't think it's as a negative sense. So when we're training the speed and the heel, you're talking about the heel coming up. That's if your toe hits and your heel plants, like you're probably a really good hitter. If you land what we call a float, where your foot lands and all at the same time, you're not really using the ground in the way that it should be through the body, and that transfer energy gets manipulated really quickly. Right. So like when you talk hand depth for us, we want to get, that's why I talk about that clear of the front side. Right. The problem on TV for anybody that listens to the show is you are looking at a game that is being videoed or filmed from an offset of center field. So it's an offset angle. So when it looks closed on TV, it's opened, the foot when it lands. Okay, so if it lands closed on TV, like it's probably just normal, right? So nobody in the game that I can find is landing closed off and able to drive the baseball the way we're talking about driving. Everybody is landing with an open foot, with an open
Yeah, the
stance.
close is not going to let the sequence
That's right.
of the joints work upwards as the
That's
lead
right.
side works up. It's going to stay
So for
down, right? You're going to hit
yeah,
low
so in
choppers to
different
first baseline.
exactly right. So in differences in our world and y'all in golf is that's understood, right? Like it's an understood idea. In mechanical, you have to have that. In baseball, it's been you can't do that because you're not Evan Longoria. You can't do that or you're because you're this or that. So it's been trained in these guys that they can't do that, hindering speed. Now, with that said, I'd be interested to hear about training speed on the golf end because in baseball, we do a lot of different rotational power things, vertical power things. They call it the horsepower, the engine, the horsepower,
Mm-hmm.
vertical throwing medicine balls, pushing, things that you can do that we don't have a weight room in here, but we do have medicine balls and a medicine ball wall and heavy bats overloaded and loaded. We have a short bat that's heavy knob loaded. That's a 26 inch, and you have to learn where that whippy comes from. So we have pieces and tools that we have a 37-37 bat that helps train the body to organize different variables as fast as they can. So for me, when I always have a guy who's a handsy player, I put our green bat, which is an end-loaded plus 3 ounces, so it's a 33-36.
So
Put that in their
it's
hands.
counterbalanced.
It counterbalances. So I put it in their hands, and it counteracts their ability to use their hands, so they can't use it. So on the other end, if I give them the underload bat, and it's -3, so it's a 33-29 or whatever, it's -6. It's really light. But if I give it to them, those guys tend to whip it with their hands and be able to do that. So it doesn't help the player at all. So, but you have to know those things. You have to know the dynamics of the swing and how they use the weight and the length to their advantage, right? So we identify a lot of it quickly in the first 5 or 6 swings. So once we identify we have a handsy player, right? We're trying to get the depth and the length and all that stuff. We go put them on the medicine ball wall, right? And we put this heavy ball in a shock put in a whatever kind of throw you want, where their hands are stuck behind them and they have to learn to use the momentum forward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would if I was a guy trying to learn how to swing the golf club fast, I would go pick up a medicine ball and see how fast I can do it with a guy standing 5 feet in front of me. You run at that guy fast as you can. You take that medicine ball and you throw it underhand, shock put or not shock put, a scoop toss as violently as you can and level towards the ball and see how they organized getting that speed and where it gets stopped. Because that's where the back problem comes in. When you talk about all those back problems these guys are having, it's because they don't let the chest and swing move. They would rather tilt down and get stuck in the front side. So I would open a foot up, right? I would tell them to let that speed out instead of hinder it and hinge it. They're too stable too quickly. Let's put it that way. So that's where I think our world in, I guess, grandfathered in speed, right? So a guy like me that comes in the back half of career of playing at a level that I did and the hand speed I have, taking that and literally having the ability to say, hey, I don't have to manipulate this anymore, right? Because I don't have to worry about the ball coming at me. I really get to just swing it as fast as I can. And if the ball ends up on, I've been at Belfair and I drove the green at 11, that's 328, right? And you landed on the green. I'm two putting and I'm still birding it while you're chipping and having to make perfect shots, So being able to have the speed because of the training and the violence and everything like that we have and the impact, right? I think a lot of what could be an advantage, what we do here is a lot of weighted balls. So they have to hit overloaded balls, underloaded balls, smaller overloaded balls. So the hand-eye coordination the impact becomes trained. So they understand the violence and the speed they have to have for that kind of an impact.
That's very interesting because that was one of my next or questions I had was like, so Doc Sasho has a device that he and Marty Jertson from Ping developed. I believe it's Marty, the engineer, called the Stack. And
Hmm.
it's, I'm sure you've seen the super speed sticks that were very
Hmm.
popular.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's an overload and underload. So you've got one that's slightly heavier than whatever your, I guess, your driver would be, and then you have one that's slightly lighter, and then one that's slightly heavier, and they're based off percentages. Now the difference with the Stack is it's it collects the data to an app, and the AI configures where you should be swinging. And I now I could have this completely wrong. So Doc Sasha, if you're listening, I'm sorry. We'll talk about it when you come on the show. You correct me. I'm more than happy to be corrected. But from what I have seen on it, it keeps track of stuff and then tells you when you should adjust one way or the other, what you should be training for. Um, but from what I'm hearing you say is in baseball for speed training, you're doing a lot with how to sync the body to correctly load and unload, and then, but you're also hitting with heavier baseballs to
Yep. So
understand the
we,
dynamics of
yep.
impact.
Yep. Because that's where deficiency you're seeing, right? Because that's where we know, right, as just an old school minded without technology video, all that is if I miss hit a ball, right, what happened? Like, where did I lose the ability to keep the ball and the bat on the same plane?
That's very
So we
interesting.
have
I'll have to bring that up to him and see what he thinks about that.
we have these weighted balls. Now I don't know, for me, I don't know. Preparing for the impact is how the speed is trained, right? So in golf, that ball is so light, and so they don't really. There's no negatives of hitting it,
Well,
right?
yeah, but
Like,
I know that that effect has worked extremely well in hockey too. Because Ron Wilson, the coach, he coached San Jose, he coached at Washington, and he coached the the World Cup team. And Ron used to live at Belfort. I don't know if you ever met him through Jeff, but I used to play a lot of golf with Ron, and he came back from when the season ended. He came back in the spring, and he had picked up probably 30 yards on his driver. And for a guy
mm-hmm.
that was 55 back then, I mean, he would air carry it 300 sometimes without even blinking an eye.
Jeez.
And it's like, Ron, what the hell? And he was training with the hockey team. And he said one thing that they did was they were using heavier pucks that year. One of the
Yep.
trainers brought in heavier pucks.
Yep.
So that there is a
And
lot of validity to that.
I think just as valuable of information for us is when they hit the underload, the lighter balls, right? Because you start to see, we do a lot of mixing it and variable there. We do a lot of just lighters and heaviers, and we have a mid-level ball that's, kind of above average ball, but it's not as heavy as that impact. And what you see is the older guys, when they get the heavier bat, the heavier ball in their hands, and they start hitting it, they have a tendency to try to manipulate and gain speed because they know the ball's heavier.
Mm-hmm.
So when I mix in the lighter ball, the same swing applies, and they start hammering baseballs, right? Because we mixed in the baseballs as well. And the guys are kind of like freaked out, like, why? Well, we didn't do anything special. I didn't guru you. I didn't come in there and put my hands on you and manipulate you. All I did was,
Guru, you.
that's right. I didn't guru you. I say that a lot because a lot of what we're talking about is guru nerd that the coach, knows that very few of our players here, now our higher level players, like I just got a text from a guy who was a seventh round draft pick and went to Tennessee, and he's a catcher, and he's very, very smart intelligently, but he's trying to figure out why his body is hindering the movements his mind is wanting to make. So when that's a lot of the issue here in our facility. The brain is counteracting what the body is doing, and it wants to do a certain thing. So we do a lot of the weighted balls, younger kids, and you'll start to see differences. When they see the weighted ball, it's the same swing as when they have the light ball. They just don't have success with the light ball because they're just young kids. It's not, they're always hitting a heavier bat. They're not strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
That
They're
impact has
already
always been an
programmed for
issue.
that way.
They're already programmed. So it's kind of, when you talk about speed training, I don't think I don't think we overthink it here in terms of golf speed training. I think learning the bottom of the swing and how to organize that, and starting, I see a lot of Instagram stuff of a guy, I have no idea who it is, but he does a lot of rhythmic stuff where the hands, and he starts narrow. He tells the guy to kind of swing the club forward, swing it back, and then that transition piece. If you transition it slowly to the load, like you're talking about, and you can't interact with the ground efficiently enough because you're just backing off. Where if you're swinging it as hard as you can, let your body just figure it out. And that's a hard concept because not every coach is just going to say, hey, bro, here's the idea. Pull it back fast, unload it fast. If it looks ugly and you hit it 350, I mean, who cares,
Yeah, who
right?
cares?
Who cares? So, the hard cultural piece, we talked about this at the very front of the show, the cultural piece, right? Like John Daly, let's just take it that way. Like popular in the fan room, right? Probably not popular in executives and PGA Tour. You know what I mean? But when he picked that sucker up, there was no training. Bubba Watson, there was no training to it. It was literally, hey, let's go hit it. Let's go hit as hard as we can. You know? And John Daly, as good as his talent was, right, survived based on just hitting the ball hard as you can. And if you would have added in just a little bit of a coaching, a little bit of a probably a mentor off the field, like you probably have one of the best golfers to ever walk the planet just because of the athletic ability, you know? So training speed, I think you're in a new world for golf that baseball is just a way of life. You have to have certain attributes in speed. And we've had training tools for speed for hundreds of years, whether it's Babe Ruth swung a 40-inch bat, 40-40, you know? Well, you know, pitching was lower then, so you could do that. Well, now these guys are finding out there's a perfect size and weight because they are so fast. They've always been had that fast, you know? So mixing and combining the mental and the baseball approach world with the mechanical speed, right, is where we're currently at, is understanding its pure value, putting a data point and a metric on it, on the value of it, and combining that with arbitration, right? That instead of valuing a player just on pure statistics, we go, okay, this guy's got this kind of bat speed, this kind of production, this kind of this in certain aspects. And that values that player differently. Like the Braves won the World Series this year. This is the first time the Braves had led the league in bat speed. That has no coincidence of winning a World Series. Like it's pure information, right? That the reason they're able to hit elite pitching in this year's World Series is because they have elite bat speed, elite hand speed. They choose baseballs at a better rate because they're affordable, the affordability of being able to wait longer. And that in itself wears out pitchers. It wears out
that split
staffs.
second at that level.
It's a
gives them a huge
advantage. The two guys in the World Series are the top two in bat speed and hand speed. Like, sure, their numbers aren't the best in terms of overall production as like the Dodgers and whatever, but in terms of pure bat speed, pure hand speed, when the Nationals won it, they had top five. You know, when the guys are winning World Series, guys offensively swing it faster than everybody else. So that to me, when you're looking at a golf swing, I don't know if you guys track the hand speed. I think you should. I think hand speed is correlated to general speed. I think in impact training, learning how to impact the golf ball at a heavier ball, it organizes the body to receive that and not in a negative way, right? So like if I'm Bryson DeChambeau and I'm breaking down in the wrist like he's been in the back, whatever, and that impact is killing me, right? That there's something wrong mechanically because I've added speed. My body's not taking it, right? We have to learn why it's not taking it, not back it down, because if you back it down, that's when your body's going to overcompensate in other areas and actually make it worse, in my opinion. So when you look at like a Tiger that's had back problems, well, it didn't start with just the back. It started with his lower legs. Like his front side went out, his back side went out, his hip went out. Then it just went up the chain. Like in kinetic energy, like the chain is breaking down because one thing may have been manipulated or, at one moment.
Yeah, one of the joints isn't carrying its load, and then the other joints are having to make up for it.
That's right. I mean, he's a super intelligent guy. Like you wouldn't think a guy like him is that intelligent about the golf swing in terms of kinetic energy, momentum, thoracic, all that kind of, terminology that he does use, which I love it because he's learning more about why his body is breaking down. So, I mean, you're looking at, I think Bryson's on the forefront of a lot of the technology and a lot of learning the speed. I think a lot of what he's talking about in these, living in these type A and type B moods for competition purposes, it's just what athletes do naturally. Now, I'll make a bold statement here. I don't think Bryson DeChambeau is athletic as anybody. I think he's unathletic as it gets in terms of generic athletic ability. So like a guy like Dustin Johnson, who is super
Mm-hmm.
athletic, has a super unique move that produces power, right? It's been all he had to do is mix in, a little bit of mental, fortitude to be a really good player. Colin Morikawa can do things on the tennis court that not a lot of guys can do. You know, these super Brooks Koepka. I mean, guys as super athletic as it gets. These athletes are now showing up in the golf world that can do other things other than swinging a golf club. And they're learning what the benefits are because they do things in different arenas. They compete in different arenas. They learn how to swing it in different arenas and learn violence through other areas. So, like our guys, most of our guys that are 100, 103 have played football in some form or fashion growing up, right? They come with violence. They come with understanding how to be violent, right? So we don't have to teach much of that. The guys that are not those type of players, just pure baseball specific players, they don't understand it. They don't understand why you have to be violent and what that really looks like. And once it's found, those guys typically have a higher experience because they play a lot longer. They combine both, and then they're deadly. Then they become deadly players. But it's just a matter of when you can get them. So I'll give you an example of speed in our game versus I think a little bit of golf. We're talking about Rory going back to gaining speed, right? He's trying to change his swing for that reason and seeing the value of it. Well, he's been struggling for quite a long time. I think he's borderlining the age to do that, in my opinion. I think he's got a lot of career, rounds in him to be able to go back and try to get that speed. Where you have a guy like one of my players who's sitting here, Devontae Brown is an NC State, he's an All American. He's going to be a top 10 round draft pick. He's leadoff hitter for them right now. And he has never been pushed or told to go 100%. Okay, so all we did in the offseason was organize his swing, his load, his mechanic, his bridge, his posture, all that stuff to swing it as fast as humanly possible. And you're starting to see numbers early in the season that he's never had. So you combine experience, combine failures, combine training, combine a lot of things that are already happened, right? And mix it with pushing it to the limits, as fast as you can. And then you've unlocked a weapon, really. There's no fear of anything in our game. In your game is if you hear it a lot of time. Ricky Fowler's doing it. Jordan Spieth did it. They're going through these swing changes and pattern changes, and they don't trust it in a tournament environment.
No, it's
So
not burned into their system,
that's not
and that's
burned
a
in their
very
system.
difficult thing to go through. I mean, the fact
Very
that
difficult.
Tiger went through three changes and still competed and won at the level he did is, I mean, that's just an illustration of how good his mental game was.
Would you argue though that making the changes I think that they're looking for? I don't think Tiger ever looked to gain speed. I don't
No,
think that was ever his issue. I think Ricky Fowler, these guys are looking for speed. They're trying to figure out how to gain ball speed. So you're starting to see how long that process takes for some of the world's best golfers, right? So like if I'm a young golfer sitting at home, bro, if I'm 15, 16 years old right now, I'm trying to gain speed,
hmm
right? Once I start to understand speed, my shot shape, do that, then I get out of this block training and I start to get into variables. I want to learn how to cut it around a tree or draw it for Augusta or whatever the shot shapes and challenge the speed.
Well, and that's why I think the block and variable, as I said, are useful and necessary in certain segments. So you have to train block. You train your speed in a block practice session, and once
Agreed.
you're able to develop that, now you take it out in a variable session, and learn how to use it.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think that's where you get these. If I'm a college golfer, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to go to these tournaments and use different variable shots and try to use and compete it. But the key here is when you're variable training, you can't lose speed. That's where the technology comes involved, in my opinion. Right? If
Yeah,
I
and
have a
if these guys, like, I mean, I know Ricky was in motocross. I don't know what other sports he did. I know Jordan was obviously doing great things as a junior golfer, and I'm not privy to what he other sports he might have played. I do know that as a kid, I mean, I grew up in the '70s and '80s, so it was. I mean, you played whatever the season was.
That's right.
Right? We weren't
That's right.
training for golf in a gym in
That's
I
right.
grew up in Michigan, hitting balls in a net. No, you were playing basketball. In the fall, you're playing football. Summer, you're playing baseball and golf or whatever. So I was lucky I had that. And once I started the weight training on pushing some serious weight around the gym, my distances started jumping excessively.
That's right.
I mean, I'm talking 20 years ago, my stock 8 iron. Now I'm 6'5". Back then I was about 230. My stock 8 iron went from about 168 or so to 182,
Jeez.
which was you've played Bell for what is it, the 6/17 hole, the par three on the West Course.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that the pin was 174 to a back pin, and I kept hitting it longer and longer. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to smooth 8 iron, so I'm short of the pin. And we get up there, and I'm over the back fringe.
Yeah.
I'm 6 yards past
Yep.
the hole, eight
Yep.
yards past. So that's 182, and that was my stock back then. I'm like, okay, this is interesting stuff. And that was 20 years ago.
Well, see, for us over, and I think if you ever played around, if you ever been in a big league camp, the pitchers that don't pitch, they go play golf 4 days out of five. All right,
They got it made.
those human beings right there are some of the best handicap golfers I have ever seen. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't spend time in playing it. That's the only difference. You know, a buddy of mine played with the Detroit Tigers. He threw 100 miles an hour. Okay, he gets up on he's 6'3", he's 175 pounds, soaking wet. He gets up on the driver, and you're looking at 330 carry, and he is swinging like he is just out for a stroll at midnight on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
He's just smooth swinging it. You know, iron shots. They're high, they're long. Right, things that those guys are trying to accomplish. Right, these guys, because of the twitchy training, in those patterns and planes they receive, they just go. They don't think. They don't have to worry about training it. They just it's just been in there. So the speed portion of training it, I think, will only get better as the more time we give it, and to start to see. Now, the only thing, my back hurts too when I swing a golf club when I'm swinging it the wrong way. So for me, it's about if I'm coming out there trying to give it 80%, that's when my lower back starts to tighten up. So that's where I'm trying to be too technical, too this and that, where I just say, screw that. That's my indicator. Hey, open your foot up, dude. Get that thing short back, get it loaded, and just let the front side take over in your speed. So it's a really cool dynamic, because I think baseball's ahead of a sport for the first time in terms of for development purposes. Like, dude, we've always been behind in a lot of different areas. So seeing some of the tour players trying to go after speed. Phil Mickelson's one of them. He was probably before DeChambeau just because he got older and had to keep up. But you start to see the relationship now between the golf player and the baseball player, and what it takes to gain speed and consistency long term for longevity.
Let me ask you
So,
this question: do you think, because it's like baseball's a rotary sport in the same way that golf is, but
mhm.
there and as we've talked about, there are some differences. Do you think that baseball does not seem to have the high rate incidence of back issues that golf does, in particular in the lumbar spine? Because one, you guys aren't opening up your hips the way golfers are, or is it because that that baseballers, if they do have a back issue and they're taught to swing at a fast rate early on, that anyone that might have a back issue or prone to one is kind of eliminated from that pool at an earlier age?
Yeah, so I, I've never played with or have heard anybody with a back issue in a baseball sense.
Right.
I've
I
heard
don't see those at all.
I've heard of a lot of lumbar problems with golf players, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those guys, in my opinion, have inefficient. Like what Joaquin Neiman's doing, I'm just going to tell you, like, he is going to get hurt eventually. Right now, I don't know how you. That would be. I would have fun with that idea of how to fix him, because like every human is the same. Physically, what he's doing at the speed he's doing it will only last so long, because the body's just going to break down. I don't care how much power you put in it, how much workouts or routines or maintenance you put in, is going to fail. Right. So in our world, the difference, I think, is where the speed happens in the bottom half. Like your guys are a little bit further down on the bottom, so it takes a lot more pressure on the position of where you're setting up to get that power.
So
Right. So
the tilting of the pelvis and then the angle that the spine's set at.
yes, I think that the how you guys spine angle that thing, it's sometimes it's mind boggling to me how that happens with the speed that you're now. A lot of it's got to do with the shaft length, right? Like that distance and what changing it from a little longer to a little shorter, or having that ability to go long in the shaft helps out like DeChambeau because he can stay more in that rotational plane and not have to get underneath the swing as much. So you don't have to bend down. You don't have to get in that posture as much. You don't have to get up in your legs as much. But when you talk, let's talk 2000 or let's go 1999 Tiger Woods when he's got first tailor-made driver that's a steel shaft, right? It doesn't produce the same energy and power. So he's got to get out of his legs and off the ground and stop using the ground in a decel and just get off of it. And let it out and go, right? You see a lot of those snatch back, finished follow-throughs that he has that, to me, helps maintain his body. When he gets rid of that and starts to become like a freer swinger later on in his career, smoother, tends to be where the failures start to run because you just don't get away with that, the speed. So back problems in golf, to me, when I'm watching it, knowing the patterns and the swing, when you have a dump of what I call the dump of a knee towards the ball, then a rotation in the hip, your back is taking the beating of it. And being a slower player with or a lighter club at the bottom, right? It's heavier at the bottom than in the baseball swing and then at the top where the handle is. It's lighter for us, lighter for you guys as well. But ours is the MOI is a little bit different, right? It's got a little bit of weight in the handle, a little bit in the knob in majority, but it's all, all the way transitioned out rather than the golf swing. It's that energy translating all the way down to the tip to the club.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much weight in the hands. So it allows the hands to be, how do you say it, a movement of energy, a conservative energy rather than a release of energy, in my opinion. And release, so you hold on to it, and where you hold on to it becomes in your back. It becomes right there in that pinch and that lumbar support that you have. I think that's why Rory has lost in speed, in my opinion. Because the way that those hips work, he's getting a little more stand-up-ish rather than letting it go and getting into it and relieving it. But, I don't know enough about how do I say this? I don't know enough about the dysfunction of the club speed at the bottom and how it relates to the body. And I just tell you, on the baseball side, if I have a guy that bends that much in the side bend and does that, if he doesn't release the barrel in some fashion or have an open side or front foot to let him get that out, you'll just bang on top of it and it'll break. And I've seen it multiple times. I got a 16-year-old in here that has most side bend I've ever had, much like a golf player. You put him on the golf course, you would think the swing would be more conducive for hitting a driver. However, the guy can't hit it because he can't feel where the speed happens at the bottom because in baseball he's been learning to stay flat. So you get the counterproductive of the body. So in long story short is we actually want to see improvement on his golf swing before we see it in the baseball world because that'll let us know that he's using his swing and the power in the correct way, which is kind of nobody does that. Nobody's going to go take a kid.
That you got a kid that say, "Hey, go work on your golf swing to improve your baseball swing."
Yeah.
That
So
would be
when I say
of.
that, right? When I say that, I literally me and Coach Charles here that we go take him out and play. Like he goes with us and plays, and we during tournaments, if he has a bad day, we go out and play around in golf. Because if the golf swing for him is getting, he doesn't know this, right? He doesn't know that yet. But when the golf swing is better, right? When he's making solid contact, his baseball swing, it goes through the roof. And he has no idea. We keep that from him because we don't want to put too much pressure on it to understand it. But that's the same way we did with EJ. When EJ had made the connection between his golf swing and the baseball swing, and we want the same ideas and concepts, both worlds had exploded, right? We had the career year at LaGrange, and we have a potential, to be a scratch golfer as an amateur and, hit it better than anybody out there. So I think in terms of the back problems, I think if you don't start seeing players open up their front foot, in terms not just in the inverted exverted, in that I'm talking about backing it up to get it underneath the hip and the pelvic when you're opening it up, when you're getting into it per se, or getting out of it if you want. If you're getting that and clearing it, if you're not clearing it and you see those front heels and those toes start to turn while they're swinging that, all of that is an unstable joint that's that has unprecedented speed on it, and your body can't handle it.
Right.
It won't.
Baseball, if you look at most hitters, almost everyone I've ever seen, that lead leg is angled backwards away from the mound.
Yep.
So in golf, it's much easier to get your hips, as you're saying, out of the way and rotate it if that left leg is straighter or in the process of straightening, preferably straighter, in particular on a drives. That it's and like a guy like what's his name? He's a very good teacher. He's out of the Midwest. He's very big on having that left leg leaning backwards. Backwards, like a baseball player.
Yep.
Shit, what is he? He's
Yep.
Brando Chambly's buddy. I'm sure I'll think of it in a minute. But he's real big on that, and I think that allows that left side of the pelvis to lift up and takes the pressure and the torsion out of that lumbar spine.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that compression where it's not going low and dipping down and then trying
That's
to
right.
rotate simultaneous.
That's right. And like Joaquin Neiman, dude, when I'm watching him, I know he won the Genesis. I know he just scorched that course. Like I know he had great success. But when I'm watching his head jerk like that during the swing, dude, it screams in my body to yell at him and say, "Hey, bro, you're gonna get hurt in like the next 3 years. Like you're not gonna be able to play." Like Patrick Cantlay was the same way. Like he had some back problems really quick. Sergio Garcia, Jason Day had major back problems. And those guys were all speed players in their prime. That was not like they were just talented, right? There was no reason behind it.
Yeah,
So
Jason, speaking of hips, Jason has opened up his hips. He's got more hip turn on the backswing, and it's opening up on the forward swing. Lucas Wald. Lucas is big on getting that left leg straight sooner,
Yep.
which I think is a good thing.
Like my thing, and I always like visually, and this is going to sound odd, visually, when I watch golf, I want to watch Matthew Wolff. The pattern that he is, it is eerie similar to a baseball swing, getting that right elbow underneath that club as fast as you can. That matters in our game. So the pattern fits my eye, right? The issue that he has is that left leg being opened, right? And I don't know if that he's working with George Galopoulos. Like, I don't know if he's ever thought about it, but I would close him off. I would close off his front side. Instead of it being a little bit opened, I would close it off and tell him, hey, get out faster, right? So like you're getting out just trying to hold on to the club. How about you close it off and get out faster and see what happens?
And let the club release instead of the hold off.
Club release. That's right. Instead of trying to hold it off. It's like that's the way I would go about it. Because again, I'm working in my mind, in my brain, I'm working with one of the top players in the country, in the world, right? There's things that he does athletically that we don't have to overthink, right? But putting him in a better setup, not the swing, but his body in a better setup and making him do it, right? Forcing him to have to do certain movements is more repetitive and consistent and more repeatable than anything else you'll ever tell him. Like working on the downswing, working on keeping it, all that stuff is great, in my opinion. But the problem, he still goes out there in the tournament round and he's doing the same issues with the same problems, right? So we have to change something. The training has got to change. The speed doesn't have to, right? Don't back it down. But how about instead of that foot being, opened a little bit, like backing it away, how about we close it off? Close that thing off, open the toe, and get more left, release it faster. And see what happens. I mean, it's all a guessing game anyway.
Well, yeah, I'm a big proponent of keeping the swing. It's the motion of the swing itself the same, but as you mentioned, modifying the setup so that it's going to produce a different result or at least a different feel as far as its relationship to the ball. So the body into itself is moving very similar, but you've
Mm-hmm.
adjusted one thing that is not going to let it move in the same fashion it did before,
That it did. That's right.
and it yes, it's going to create a new feel for him. I get exactly what you're saying.
That's right. Because we did it with the kid. We have a kid that's weird in here, dude. He's super athletic, super wiry, super strong. Looks like Will the Thrill, like just dumb. The problem he has is he's got an internal rotation problem. Like it just hadn't tightened up yet. Like he hasn't physically tightened up in his legs, his joints to do what he wants to do in the baseball world. So we have to get a little crazy. Like that's where the mad science come out. We close the sucker off, put his barrel like almost flat, like to the ground, and told him, "Hey, hit the ball. Good luck. Step close, do that." And his body, like it just organized it. Like the things he did, we were looking for 5 or 6 years, and he just did it. Like naturally. Then what we look for as coaches is it repeatable, even though it's abnormal in a feel, right? Does the player want to repeat it naturally rather than forcing it? So like when I'm watching golf and you're watching guys that are scorching the course, they hardly take their time getting to the ball. Like they get up there, smack it, get up there, putt it, get up there, drive it, get up there, smack it. The guys that take all that time in the pre-routines, those are guys are the ones that are falter pretty quickly, in my opinion, just because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of checkpoints you have to mark before you can go hit the shot you want to hit.
Yeah, I mean, Peter Oosterhouse, the old CBS announcer and great player from the UK, said, when you're playing well, everything is you're not thinking of even one thing. Maybe when you're playing shitty, you got a
Yeah,
100,000 thoughts running through your head simultaneously. You're trying to
and we
organize
always,
them all, like herding
we
cats.
always, yeah, we always tell our kids like, we always joke. We say the same guy. So if he has a good swing, a bad one, the next one, we say, hey, same guy. Like when you're hot, what's the difference between you're hot and you're not? Like, what's the difference? There shouldn't be any really difference besides you feel good, you're having results. The other ones, you feel like crap, so you start questioning things,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, if anything, when you're not hot, we want to get more aggressive, more in attack mode, less in passive, and trying to fight our way out of a slump. We want to swing our way out of it because that's the only way you're going to get out of it. And over here, that's the same concept in golf is if you're not playing well, man, and you're constantly thinking of things, because you do when you're failing. It's human nature, right, to self-evaluate and try to be better, which I get. But when you're not, and you are playing well, there's no difference in patterns of swing. It's just the idea and the thought of creeping negatively into the swing pattern that kills it. And all that is, Pete, is it kills speed. I think the speed is the whole concept of a lot of issues when you're talking about a golf player. Not much in hockey because theirs is a little different, but best especially in cricket and in things that you have to, if you try to back down, you have manipulation problems that you're not going to be able to handle. So the speed to me is the key and the killer to a lot of issues when it comes to mental, it comes to a swing question mark, execution, consistency, and I would love to track it. Like if I was a tour guy, a data guy, I'd love it to sit there and test some of the speed attributes, not in the ball speed and club speed, but the hand speed, right? Because when guys are feeling good, they let those things fly, right? And the club just follows.
Yeah, I
When
know
you're
Sasha does a lot with hand speed, and they're using even a question. Michael Carroll is a very good trainer. He's out in California. Does a lot with golf. Fit for Golf is his handle on social media, and shout out to Michael. And he's been on the show. He was one of my first guests. Um, there was some discussion about what happens when there's a ratio supposedly that should be between the hand speed and the club speed, and if it's not happening from say the 7-iron up to the driver consistently, and the difference of the ratio, what could be the problem? And that's the only uh, thing I've seen in golf. Not that doesn't mean it's not out there. I'm not saying that. That's the only one I've seen that's been pushed out through social media that talks about hand speed, at least in golf. So I think you're right that there's maybe not enough focus on that.
I think that's where a lot of the issues come. I know they do in our world. Like when we're trying to correlate the books, I think there's a lot more similarities. And I honestly, if we want to get down to it, I think the only differences in our game in this in golf is One is the momentum piece, right? Like we do a lot of different stuff to load up the swing because we have a lot more time. The golf swing is predetermined on your time, right? You unload it as fast as you can unload it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you want to unload it. And the other pieces of it is, in baseball, there's risk of swinging and missing, right? So that risk and that it weighs into all of the other decisions and inefficiencies that happen. Well, in golf, if you swing and miss, you're not playing golf anyway, right? So there's no fear there. You know what I mean? Like the only fear becomes, what's a good miss versus what's a bad miss. Where do I want to be if I do miss it? Where do I want? I can't be. It's going to cause me more problems, right? So like I think a lot of the negative things that they creep into to golf players is pure. To me, it's just the speed, right? The one thing remains over here in ours. If you swing and miss at full speed, you put fear in the pitching coach, the guys that are handling pitch calling that eliminate things for you, right? So you don't have to worry about it anymore. So, and a lot of guys like Ted Williams talk about setting up pitchers by swinging through pitches, right? So, in our world, if you swing through a baseball pitch, like it creates a doubt in everybody else's mind. That's a win for us. You may not have success out of that, but it's a win, right? If you go up there and you're trying to put it in play, you're trying to hit a shot on the golf course, and you're not, getting after that execution, and you're going to get in trouble, right? So like there's similar the piece of the loading, the ball just moving is a difference, right? Like that's just an automatic difference. The third thing is, and a lot of my father-in-law talks about this. He won the club, championship, whatever. He was a senior and won it, whatever. Or he thinks he's really good. He thinks that the pressure of golf is different than baseball. I agree to a degree, to a point, right? Guys that play in major league stadiums, Power 5 stadiums in front of 13, 14, 15, 20,000 people or 40, right? The pressure of of hitting a golf shot in front of people isn't an issue for us. Like that pressure won't kill us. Now, standing over a putt will probably kill us. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference in a lot of that portion. But a lot of the game of baseball is very individualistic goals in a team environment.
Well,
Like I
yeah,
think,
I agree because I played. I was a pretty good little league pitcher, and I was a good hitter too. But I was probably a better pitcher. I had very good control, and I compared. I played pro golf, and I compare that when people ask me, "What's the closest thing that I can relate to them as the mental side of playing pro golf?" And I say, I would have to place it as being a pitcher because you have so much time to think.
yeah,
Right, a pitch, between the pitch, you throw it out, you walk around the mound for a minute, you got this, and the motion of it takes all of half a second,
half a second at
and,
most.
and then you're thinking about it in the dugout, and you're constantly thinking, the same as in golf. You're out there for 4 hours, and I think if you accumulate all your swings, it comes to somewhere around 2 minutes.
That's right. That's right.
So you have
That's
all
right.
this time to think.
I think golf is, I haven't followed it. Like I said, it's only been a year and a half for me to actually follow in depth wise because I'm becoming more passionate with it. The training side of it, I'm starting to see, some more social media stuff coming out about how they're training some of these guys. TPI is at the forefront of that. I'm sure there's others, in what they're identifying as traits of, great golfers, great PGA players, great baseball players, great pitchers. There are a lot of things. They're testing the boundaries and seeing similarities. So those athletes that are in baseball doing those are doing things, at a higher rate physically than a golfer. Where, for us, it's switching the brain here. Baseball is such a hard game in terms of the failure rate that there are things that you can't control. Right, I hit a good golf shot. There's nothing to stop it but the cup.
Mm-hmm.
I hit the ball 115 miles an hour and at 2 degrees and it hits the shortstop. He catches it. Hey, I just smoked that sucker, but I'm out. I got
Right.
nothing to show for it. I lose money. So I think that training the mental piece of the risk reward in a golf shot should be a lot easier in terms of going full speed. If you go 80% or whatever and not know what that 100% full commitment shot is in the speed department, I think that you create some of those bad habits. You create some of that inconsistency on yourself. And I think that that's different in baseball. Like, you just don't ever see a guy give up bat speed to hit the ball. Like, they just don't do it. They don't fear that. I think in golf, you hear a lot of the times of, hey, you just got to put it in the fairway here. And he goes off that and does it because of the pressure of the situation. He tries to back it down, like counteract it, and hits it right or pulls it. Where I would sit there, if I was a caddy, like Joaquin Neiman, I would say, hey, bro, pick your freaking driver up on 18 here and put this turn away and drive that sucker down the freaking fairway. Like, get after that thing. What do you have to lose? So, but that's just a different
Does baseball not do
perspective.
it like a guy like Ichiro, who's really not a power hitter? Does he? Would you say that he's still swinging at 100%, even though he's placing, looking to, or it seemed, at least from an outsider perspective, looked like he's looking to place the ball more to advance runners in certain positions, or even
All right,
some of the
so
big hitters who are trying to hit it maybe to opposite field if you got a guy on second to get him around to third and home.
right, so I think that's a good point. A guy like Ichiro, right? If you ever pull up articles on Ichiro, I saw it in person. Ichiro Suzuki carried the most power in the big leagues for his time in the big leagues. He had it. It is in there. I've seen it at the All-Star game in 2010. He hits balls 30 rows farther than the David Ortiz would. Right? The difference in his game versus, let's just say, the potential of the power that he has is the amount of effort he had to put into that swing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was that red line. It crossed it. Right? So in our world, he has the top end speed. He knows it. Right? His approach and what he's trying to accomplish at the plate is what dictates, slapping a ball that way or pulling it or whatever. So that's the difference in our world. Like, once you choose the shot on a golf course, it's the same as if I choose an approach against a pitcher. It's just about execution and who's willing to deviate from a plan. Right? So like the pitcher I may go up there and say, hey, I'm Ichiro here. I got good speed, lefty. I know this guy's going to fall off the mound. He's going to leave one middle of the plate. I'm going to try to, go to the middle of the field here. And if I catch it early on a breaking ball, I can pull it over the fence for a home run. Okay. Where a guy like me that's not a runner, that doesn't have that ability, and being a left-handed hitter, you have a unique advantage anyway to use the entire field more than a right-hander, right? Because the second baseman is not as gifted as a defender as the shortstop and third base. That's
Mm-hmm.
just our game, So if I'm a right-handed hitter and I know, hey, I hit a ball on the ground here, if I'm thinking on the ground, I'm not going to have a chance of anything. If anything, success, because I'm not a runner. Right? You add in the shift, there's just no chance for me to beat it through the ground. And I can't hit it hard enough. They're too good of an athletes. Right? So for me, it's, hey, I want to drive a fastball to the right side of the field against this type of arm. If I get an off-speed pitch, I'm not going to try to pull it, okay, but I'm trying to hit over the fence. I'm going to stay away from the shift, but I have to go that way. I have to go to that side. If I try to force it, so I see a lot of guys talk about the shift hindering, some of their hits. Well, and a lot of old school people are like, well, you're a big leaguer. You should be able to just drive the ball wherever you want. Well, newsflash, hitting 100 miles an hour on the outside corner isn't as easy as it seems.
When you're hitting a sphere with a cylinder bat, it's
That's
not as
right.
easy as it might sound.
It's not as easy to just do whatever I want to do all the time. So, a guy like Freddie Freeman, I watched a lot of his games being in Atlanta. He gets shifted on more than a lot of people think, and you don't know why. But the reason why he gets shifted is the line drives at 110 he hits at 10 degrees goes right to the shift. It has nothing to do with the ground balls. It's everything to do with they're taking line drives out of his game, 2 or 3 times a game because that's what he does when in certain pitches and certain pitchers. So I think the guy like Ichiro who possesses that kind of power with the ability to shut it down is much like a Tiger Woods. And you can claim him as a Tiger Woods of our game. The guy had, 2,500 hits in the Japan League and comes over here at 3,000. I mean, all-time hit leader in terms of both those leagues combined. So, like, arguably the best pure hitter of all time, right? That had the potential, also hit 250 home runs. Like, has the potential power, had a longevity career, unique stance, unique batting frame, first of its kind, much like Tiger Woods. Body didn't really break down, just got old, and the game had passed him. Right now, I think in today's world, if Ichiro walks in the dugout today, I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think he would survive because the value of a right fielder, left-handed hitter, leadoff type isn't to hit 300 hits anymore. Like the game has changed to what's valuable, what scores runs.
Well,
So you
yeah,
also,
that's like golf. It's like short hitters are becoming obsolete. They're not even like. Could there be a Zach Johnson in today's game? I mean, the
yeah, I
guy
don't.
won the Masters that one
That's
year.
right. Well, like even Spieth, when he won everything early on was an average driver, like the average, and he stayed average because he won. And then now the game has surpassed him because people are surpassing him in scoring because they drive it and they're whatever scoring better, and so he sees it and has to open up to that change, right? And so that I don't, to me, Pete, I don't understand why a Jordan Spieth would, I think it's lucky to have that kind of success and then look back, 4 years, the guy's outside the top 200 world ranking, like just getting abused, like just overnight. But that's the change. That's the change in the game eating him up. Where we had the same change. Our change happened probably 8, 9 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where these higher velocity arms, these higher velocity sliders, the chance of you hitting 3 base hits in a row against these type of hitters is impossible, right? So let's sell out on the guy that hits the 2-out double and then the guy that hits the single, or the 2-out home run when he had 2 strikeouts in front of it, right? It's like you're selling out on things that win and lose games rather than trying to do the impossible, which is get up there and have 16 hits against a Kevin Gausman. Like it's just not going to happen.
No,
You're asking your team to do things that just isn't possible.
I,
So, and
if I had to guess, I would say that Jordan pursued the distance. He was smart enough to see it was coming or it was there. And I could be completely wrong. Someone could comment on this and say you're full of shit, and you could be right. I could be completely wrong, and I'll admit it right now. But I would think that he pursued that distance
yeah,
because his game, and I call it Jeff Champion was a buddy of mine. We played together. We talked about this on his episode. It was like, and this is no disrespect to him, but I think Jordan was like a supercharged V6. But when you're going up against a guy like Dustin Johnson, who's a V10 engine,
yeah,
and Dustin wants to turn it on, he's air
you're
carrying you.
that's right, and you're in trouble.
Now, that's a lot to say given that Jordan beat Dustin in the U.S. Open, but
Well, see,
I'm
and I
talking about
like
overall and longevity.
that's right, and you sit
Right?
there, you talk about the difference in the engines, right? Like the engine, and that's different in every human, right? So the engine that Dustin Johnson's carrying, right, is the red line for that is way different and as much of a gap as the red line of Jordan's V6 supercharged,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Dustin it backing off it just because he's a lead in the game or he's leading the tournament and he doesn't have to have that risk. He can back it down and be just as good or not better than a fully redlined, V6 supercharged. So as Jordan's going around the golf course, having to push it to the limits for 4 rounds, and Dustin Johnson's out there just, hey, I'm here, going there, I'm going red line here, I'm going to back it down here. And he's just monitoring his output, giving him the best chance to go on a Sunday and win a tournament. Like I think that's the difference when you talk about the advantages of speed and creating that engine for that. It gives you just a little bit more ability to manage your body, manage your energy, give it that extra gear when it's needed, and have it when you need it, and not have to push it.
And that as we talked earlier, that would be what I would be in full agreement of is what the definition of talent is. Right?
Yes,
That is a God given
that is
ability
a God-given
it is
talent.
a physical talent
That's right.
that you're not going to develop.
You're not going to be able to beat.
Joe Schmo, 5'8", 170 pounds, is not going to develop the talent that Dustin Johnson has to be able to do that.
Exactly right.
Now, he might be able to compete that he is a superior wedge player, and all if he's driving it decent and he's able to wedge it good. And again, going back to Zach Johnson win the Masters, that year that he won, the weather got horrendously bad. So the ability to hit greens was reduced, and your wedge game became more
Premium.
premium.
Yep.
And Zach, I mean, look, he goes ahead and wins it.
Yep.
So
Same thing with Phil winning his Open this year or past year.
the PGA, yeah.
Right? Because he sat there and he could move it against or with the wind rather than everybody else is trying to get it into the wind. He has this significant advantage.
That is the sum of the beauty of golf is it still has a wide spectrum that allows across the scope of players, not big athletically gifted, but everyone because it is so long and it's over the course of so much time, meaning 4 days.
Yep.
that it's an accumulation of skill. It's not just one skill that's going to
That's
dominate
right.
the others.
That's
Now,
right.
all the scientific guys will be out there and say yes, but an engineer, if you hit it long, you have a better chance to win, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's true
That's
if
right.
you do. But if that was true all the time, you wouldn't have short hitters winning golf tournaments.
That's right. That's why I love. Now I'm telling you, in our world, if you don't have certain things, you can't. You're not going to be able to get to where you want to go. And that's the hard part of ours. That's the hard part of having talent is great, but having skill to develop it and train it to be sustainable, right? Longevity. That's how you get through college baseball, minor league baseball, and get it to the big leagues and stay in the big leagues. Once you get to the talent, everybody's got talent when you get to those levels. Every one of them are carrying the same one. It's the difference in who has trained it to be the most successful throughout the term that wins it.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps the job too. That's one of the things you'll hear a lot of guys talk about is there's even a difference between a big leaguer in the big leagues and a guy who's an MVP, like a significant athletic advantage that those guys are having. So like it's on the golf course is being closed down, right? Like there's one through whoever many is in a tournament could win it. Almost every one of them can win it. It just becomes down to, like it's not about talent anymore. It's about who can repeat it and have that energy over the 4 rounds to be able to use those gears accordingly, manage it, score it consistently, all that kind of stuff, and not be worn out. If you've ever been redlined and swinging golf, like go out to the range and hit 30 balls as hard as you can. Like you'll be tanked and
Mm-hmm. You're
gassed,
fried. Your nervous system
right?
is
So
fried.
that's just fried. You have no ability to adjust, to feel, to accept emotions of the tournament that you're feeling, adapt to that. Like all of that stuff gets taken out if you don't have that ability to maintain speed. And that's where you find out where the red line is. What's too much, right? So like I love what Bryson does at times, and then I hate it because there's no, how do I say this? There has to be a line, right? You have to find it. And if you continue pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, you don't find it. Yeah, and I understand getting to a point where his body's at, where his swing is, testing the shaft and stuff like that. There's got to be a point where it's just too much,
Especially
you know?
after guys get over the age of 30.
That's right. And he played college golf, like he's been great. I don't think if without the speed change, I don't think he's a major winner. I think he has an ability to do that now because he was an average driver of the golf ball. The wedge game wasn't as great. Now it's become a little bit easier to be a wedge player because he's always he's always in those yardages.
Mm-hmm.
Always. He didn't have to hit long irons anymore as a college golfer. He had to. He's scoring better. Now, he's a tremendous putter. So that's not like I was talking about. He's a tremendous putter of the golf ball. So, I think it all, like in our world, I'm just putting this in our world. A great driver is typically a good putter. I feel that way. Arnold was, Jack Nicklaus was, Tiger was. Those guys can putt the golf ball and drive it better than anybody. Well, in our world, if you swing it fast, you typically defend really well. Okay, you're a top end defender. You run the bases with top end. It's just a correlation of athletic ability. I think that's where you come like skill department.
Mm-hmm.
So like our kids, when we've kind of transitioned this a little bit, but we've got a couple kids that went from 84, 85 in here when I was started here to now they're pushing 103, 104. Well, what's also changed is their 60 times have gone down from 7.4s to 6.9s, 6.9s to 6.7s, 7.0s to 6.6s, right? So a lot of it has to do with all of that, like understanding what is speed and how they use it and how they can organize it across the game. Because speed in a wedge play is good too, because that keeps the spin, right? Like it's not always good to have speed because you don't always need the spin. You have to control it, right? So you have to have looser hands and you have to have different shots that you can make, but that's why you have to be kind of strategic on where you land the golf ball off the drive. So you can be a full shot club instead of having to back down a 80% wedge. But those are field players.
Yeah,
Those guys.
there is a you can't no, as you described that you have to know the nuances of your own game. It's very difficult to swing a driver at 105% and then hit a finesse wedge.
That's right. Especially because that's where you'll end up being. If you 105 drive, you'll have to finesse a wedge now. You know,
Now,
So
yeah, so some will argue, yeah, but you got to 10-minute walk or 5-minute, whatever to time to get. Yes, but it's not so much the physical aspect; it's the nervous system aspect. That's like speed
gotta slow
training.
down.
At least
Yeah,
in golf, I know this from weight training that if you're going to the higher weights that you're pushing, or the more you're training your driver for speed, the longer time frame you need between doing your next set. So if you're going to train strictly for speed, which I have all my students do, um, I tell them you need at least 90 to 120 seconds between swings. Not for your
that's right.
muscles. You need your nervous system to recover, or else
That's right.
you're spinning your wheels. Don't even waste your
That's right.
time. If you're doing uh, wave loading in the gym, you're working from 85 to 90, 95, 100, 105% of your one rep max. You need that time in between for the nervous system to recharge itself.
That's right. And that's
Um,
where we get our guys in baseball is trained at. Like what in our world is called be a professional about your work, right? Like don't make it a cardio event coming in here hitting 100 balls in 10 minutes.
mm-hmm.
That's just a professionalism about our game that they're swinging a big bat, right? There's a way to go about it. There's a reason why you're doing it. And when guys tend to slow the brain down and speed the body up is when they don't sweat in the cages. Because in between, they're taking 4 or 5 seconds to gather the thoughts and evaluate what just happened. So it's kind of a cool dynamic to see, how they put that speed into it. They sit there and evaluate, and allows them to kind of let their body recoup and go.
There are a lot of similarities, and we just scratch the surface. I know Gankus out in LA, he has gone to a number of batting coaches like you and guys who study the baseball swing to improve and learn more about the golf swing. I think there needs to be more interaction between golf coaches and hitting coaches. I think it would be beneficial for both.
I think
And
if you're pushing speed departments, I think you need to.
mm-hmm.
I think the way to keep the
uh,
body healthy and manage it and coil it and organize it now. And I'm 29. Like there's a lot of guys that are doing with doctorate degrees in baseball, but I'm at the front end of being a playing professional, having that experience and combining technology and data and movement screenings and all that, and combining them. That's where our game has got to go. Like
yeah,
our
and
game's got to
compared to
get
the
where
the
those guys are going.
doctorates, it's nothing against them, but they're looking at things. I always say that the next greatest things always come from the fringe, because the ones on the inside who are working on the things, uh, science doctors in particular, usually in these cases, that they're so focused on the data collection and seeing what's doing it that
Pushing
they're
it.
not able to focus on, hey, let's try this. And
That's
I
right.
know it's completely off the wall, but I had this idea. Let's just see what happens.
That's right.
Right. So
And
that's not a
that's what
knock
we
on them. That's just
no, you're right. That's right. And we fall into I get a lot of that here. We fall into that focusing on one dynamic and one issue. And we always have to remind our coaches that, dude, okay, that may be the issue, but there are 100 different reasons why that could be happening. And how about this? If you can't find it, like go out of this wall, crazy, guess on it, and you might find something. And 90% of what I do in here is a lot of educated guessing. A lot of, hey, why don't you try this and see if it works? Give it 5 or 6 swings, let your body organize it, and then we'll go from there. I think a lot of what golf has got to do is push the boundaries in not being the traditional swing path or traditional way of doing it, right? You have to push that uniqueness of each player, let them understand how to organize it, and then you can teach the nuances of the game that are traditionally seen as winning tournaments, right? That's execution. That's a lot of the other nuances of the
yeah.
game.
That gets into course management and things like
That's
that.
right. That's where, and if you spend a lot of time on that, right, you're going to be a really good player. If you don't have to worry about all your mechanic stuff and all that swing stuff and all that, and you can focus on execution, management, body awareness, like, dude, you're going to win a lot, or you should at least. Like you should. So, but no, you're right. There's no, dude, it scratched the surface, and I think that what baseball has done is went to TPI and got involved in learning all that, using that as a system, and that I'll give credit when credit's due. Like we searched out all that stuff. A lot of baseball minds went out there and try to understand all that. and it's done us a world of good, as well as we push the boundaries. And it's in social media. If you ever look up hitting Twitter at night, hashtag hitting Twitter, bro, it is a mess. And it is getting after people with have crazy ideas and drills, and they just wear each other out. Where at the end of the day, that's how you find some really good stuff.
Well, in the golf industry, shitty at that. I mean, Andrew Rice, he's a very good teacher. He's a friend of mine. He has a coach camp every December, and John Sinclair, who does a tremendous amount of, John's an amazing coach as well. He's down in Texas. He does a lot of research and measurement stuff, and I got all the toys. Does R&D basically, but he teaches a lot of pros and different various level golfers. But John was one of the speakers on the couple years ago. Last time I went, and he started his talk with basically a knock on the golf industry that he was reading that morning in the paper how some scientific entity had come up with. They discovered some fourth dimension of something, and how it had some peer review, but it hadn't gone through a full review yet. But most of the scientific community was applauding it. And he said, in the golf instructional world, if someone comes up with something, the first thing that most of the instructional wants to do is try to knock it down.
That's right.
And it's terrible.
That's right, and that's what hinders the growth, and that hinders the game. I mean, that's baseball, dude. That is, and that will continue as long as, like, there's people that believe that technology is going to leave the game. Like, it's just a fad, like a trend, like the 80s
it's here
war.
to stay. I can tell you
it's here to stay. Like, it's just like the cell phone. That like smartphones. Like, it ain't going nowhere.
Like a car.
If anything,
we're not going back to horse and buggy.
And I always tell guys that are afraid of technology, I always start with this. Like, anybody that's like 50, 60, 65 years old, coach, hey, when you first got threw your pager away and got a cell phone, like, were you nervous? And they're like, no, I just learned how to use it. Same thing. It's the same idea. It's the same concept, right? It's the same thing. You just got to be comfortable with not knowing it all, just knowing enough to see some benefits.
Yeah, it's giving you data. You got to know how to decipher it, but it's still giving it to you.
That's on the coach. Like, on the coach to decipher what's good, what's bad for that player. And, guys like me in the private sector that get to do that and specialize in that, like high school coaches, they fear us, where we should be working together. Mm-hmm. We should be identifying, the same things and want to do the same issues with the kids, because it's only better than them, and that's where I think our culture, baseball culture, is very, very behind the eight ball, behind big time. Because in teaching, that wouldn't happen. If guy has some, new technical way of teaching, everybody adapts to it. Everybody adopts it. Everybody goes to it. Well, when we do it here, it's seen as taboo until it's proven. And who knows how long that takes. Like, how many hitters do I have to put in the minor league and pro ball for guys to believe that what we do works? So it's concept. It is in professional sports anyway, because people are investing a lot of money in those players and don't want to mess them up. But I'll tell you this, just so everybody knows, minor league baseball, right? Coaching in minor league baseball is non-existent. Like, it's non-existent. Like, you're not getting better in minor league baseball. You're not getting better than big leagues, right? A lot of that's done in the private sector on their own work, their own time. And then once they see the benefits, everybody wants to claim them this and that. I've been in that circuit, dude. There's no coaching. Zero.
No,
so you better get trained now.
You're learning. I mean, your preparation and your game's over. All right. You're looking at the next game. You're packing. You're on the road. You're
That's
just,
right.
Yeah. You're like you say. You're not. The only thing you're learning is how to do it without giving it any conscious thought, because you don't have time. It's the same thing on many tours or Corn Ferry, or even I didn't get to the big tour. I didn't get that high, but I mean, you're on flights, even if you're private jets. And I know you got agents, but it's still all the variables that you're dealing with. You're moving around. You don't have time to think about all this shit. Not the same way you do in lower levels.
I always make fun of guys, PGA Tour, Major League Baseball. They're making these swing patterns, and they're the ones that are vocal about it. They also carry about $100 million in their bank account and about 10 years of experience, right? So they're not going anywhere. Like, George Spieth can work on his swing for the next 5 years. Like, he's going to have his tour card. Mm-hmm. Like, Ricky Fowler's the same way. Those guys, like, they just want their competitors. They want to win. So that's why they make the pattern changes. But if I'm a fringe Corn Ferry player, I'm not making changes because
You
if
can't afford it.
I can't afford them, right? So you can't like either do them, pre-professional or right do. You better hope that you get lucky and what you have is good enough to get where you want to go. That's always the risk reward, man. That's what we always tell guys here. Hey, we can fix it, right? You want me to fix it? I can fix it, but it's going to come at this cost. You have to spend this kind of time. You have no social life, right? You can't have a girlfriend. You can't. If you want to do that, hey, we'll do it. But it ain't just coming in here once a week and think it's going to work. So there's a lot of things I've changed in how much time needs to be spent in identifying that before we actually see growth and sustainable growth.
That's a lot of stuff. We covered a
It
lot of
is.
stuff.
It is.
I can't keep. I'd love to keep going. I can't keep going. I know you got a youngster at home, and your wife is
I do.
probably. I don't need her mad at me before she ever meets
No,
me.
you're fine. You're
But
fine. You're
you want it?
fine.
You got a few minutes? We can wrap up with some rapid fire. The emergency 9, I call it.
That's
Nine
fine.
questions to wrap up with.
Do
Just
it.
some kind of fun stuff. Let's see. The first one, the last one, everybody gets. The ones in between are different. So, if now that you're gotten bitten by the golf bug,
Hmm.
if you made the Ryder Cup team, and now they have that walk up song to kind of get the crowd going, what would be the song that they'd play for you?
The walkout song for the Ryder Cup would be "Bad Morning" by NBA YoungBoy. That is no doubt. That's a fire me up song right there. It probably wouldn't be in golf. That'd be probably frowned upon though.
Hey, it's getting crazier and crazier every year. I mean, I don't know if you watched the Ryder Cup last.
I did. It was
Oh,
electric.
could you imagine? I mean, you'd be used to it because of baseball, but golf is not too many times you get tens of thousands of people on the first tee,
Man,
or
I
like
would
in
probably
Phoenix, right? At the
yeah, like the Waste Open is my favorite tournament, but like I might do some Notorious B.I.G. I don't know. That's a good question. It's one of those.
All right. Let's see. If you pull into a McDonald's, what's the first thing you order?
Oh, if it has a McRib, I'm getting a McRib. If McRib's not in, I'm getting a double quarter pounder with cheese, ketchup, mustard only.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
Who's got the best swing in baseball?
Oh, best swing in
And I'll even
baseball.
make it big. I'll even go in history. Who's got the best swing ever?
Best swing ever,
Mm-hmm.
all time, Barry Bonds. It's not
Okay.
even
What
close.
about golf? Let me just throw a caveat on there. Who do you think's got the
Best
best swing of
swing.
all time?
Oh man, I'd have to best swing. Like for me, or just in terms of winning.
Just so whoever, when you look at someone and you would say that's the best swing I've ever seen. It doesn't have to
Every time
deal with mechanics or measure.
every
Just
time I watch Ben Hogan swing the golf club, I love it.
mm-hmm.
Every time.
Hard to argue that one.
Yeah, every time I watch it, it's just pure.
Let's see. If you had to play one course the rest of your life, what would it be?
One course the rest of my life, the course in Hawaii. I'm doing that every day of the week.
Kapalua, the one they played.
Kapalua.
Okay.
Every day of the week.
Let's see. Caddyshack, Tin Cup, or Happy Gilmore.
Oh, you did it to me. Happy Gilmore and Caddyshack are my two favorites. I'd probably have to go Happy Gilmore because I just like hitting bombs.
All right. You look forward more to the Ryder Cup or the Masters?
The Masters, all day of the week.
Okay. If there's a movie about your life, what actor is playing you?
Movie about my life. What actor is playing me? That's The Rock.
Okay.
Yeah. Just different arenas, challenging all the time, just doing it.
That's pretty cool one. I haven't heard that one yet, but it is what it is. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
there you go.
Hard to argue with having the Rock, but be a blockbuster, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
Let's see, two more. If you had an 8-foot putt, and if you make it, you get $1,000,000, and if you miss it, you can't use your phone for a year. Do you take the putt?
Do I take the putt? Yes. I'd probably miss it, and you can have my phone. That would actually do me wonders here. People would get off my back a little bit.
And then the last one, greatest golfer of all time, in your opinion.
My opinion, Tiger Woods.
That's
Tiger Woods, but I grew up in that era. So.
right, and it seems to be generational. Anybody that's say under
Yeah.
50 has gone with Tiger. Anyone that's over 50 has gone with Jack.
Yeah, I just whoa, his energy, dude. When he's oh my god, but he changed it for us. Like he made us watch it.
Mm-hmm.
It was something we could actually relate to.
He was like a combination of Arnold and Jack combined.
Yes, I never got to see Jack and Arnold play. You hear stories about it, but you could see the fire in Tiger, and hearing stories now because he's being able to open up.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's been able to open up about his journey, his father, and all that stuff. Like, man, the scaring professional golfers the way he did. Like, I want to be that guy. Like he is scaring people 4 or 5 holes behind, and because they're roaring at it, and it's just breaking people down.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. That there's be no way to measure it to see how many tournaments he won just by intimidation.
Agreed. I mean, Sunday red. I mean, I'll say this: we wear red here in the baseball world on Sunday for Championship Sunday. That's a fact. So that it's transcending here. But yeah, this was fun, dude. I appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. Before we check out, you got anything coming up? Anywhere you're talking, or any classes or things you got coming up? People can check out.
Yeah. So we're uploading our YouTube channel. I have a brother that is, he's got 20,000 followers on his Instagram or his Twitter page. He's done a lot of the podcasts and radio stuff. He's helping us put the YouTube channel together so we can, identify how to relate our work and put it out there for the people to see. We've got our youth teams rolling here this Friday, so we'll see what they're about, what they're talking about this week. What else?
And I'll have your Twitter feed. You want the one that the Instagram? I know your Facebook is your family page. I keep that on there. I put it. I put all the links in unless you tell me not to.
Whatever you did. Now, hey, what we really have cool is I've got True Temper becoming our professional bat fitting location in Georgia this week. So I've got all their bats, all their technology, all their software for a bat fitting, which is really that's a unicorn idea. Nobody's doing that in our state, so we're really pumped about that and their work for partnership with us. So that's what we got coming up tomorrow. We're pretty excited about that.
And website, where can people go check you guys out?
So our website is in transition, but for now it's Foundation Sports PTC LLC.com. That's our website. It's
say it one more time. That's a long one. I want everyone to get it.
It's Foundation Sports. I may be saying it wrong, but it's Foundation Sports LLC.com.
LLC.com. And I'll have that, everybody, as I always do, in the summary. Link right to your website.
Awesome.
All right, Mr. B. Locke.
Cool.
It's been enjoy. I got to get up. You guys are in Atlanta, right? Or just outside?
Yeah, now here's the deal. My father-in-law just bought a house in Belfair, so we're going to be down there more.
You'll be down here a lot, so we'll be able to talk a lot more about this stuff. But I'm going to come up there. I got a YouTube channel. It's not that big yet, but hopefully one day it will be. We'll try to do some video, just have someone follow me the phone and check out what you guys are doing. We'll talk some more shop and have a good time.
Yeah, sounds good to me, Pete. I appreciate the chance, man.
Anytime. You have a great night.
All right, brother. You too.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.